Welcome to another episode of Angel Road Outdoors, the podcast. I am Bret.
Oh, this is Adam.
Hey, Adam.
Hello.
Welcome to the studio.
I'm Brett's brother.
I think everybody knows that at this point.
I don't know.
But maybe not.
Yeah, you might
maybe
have
not.
a new listener
But
that doesn't know.
you make a good point, because I was going to ask you, because you are so infrequently here, you did your own episode. There is an episode with just Adam in here. And it was like the second one we ever did, maybe. And the picture for the
You're
episode.
not here?
Yeah. Huh?
You weren't here?
I was here. It was just me and you, though.
Oh, we did a few.
Yeah, but on Angel Road? Did we?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, maybe there are some people who don't know who you are, but we are bros, Bromeo and Juliet, if you will.
For hoes.
Bro Namath.
Is that Joe?
Yeah.
Joe's his brother?
And Adam and I went to Kansas this year together, not romantically, but for hunting. And we went 2 times.
Romantically and for hunting.
Yep, that's right. And,
That's the place to go.
That's
If
right.
anybody's ever been to Kansas,
I believe their license plates,
no.
the billboards say Kansas is for lovers.
it's not just land of the giants because of
No.
the deer, if you know what I'm saying.
I do know what you're saying. And so I figured it would be best to do a podcast to recap our 2 trips to Kansas. So we went in September for early season scouting and to hunt. And then we just went at the
I don't even know if I was struggling because I don't even know if I want to do this.
Why? Is it too depressing?
Because I think it's not depressing. It's not depressing. It's more. It was all more educational, but it's more just. Do you want to relive
the heartbreak?
Yeah, the sort of like losing the not being the being unsuccessful.
I think it's important that we document our trip for people's benefit. I think it's important for people to hear what worked and what didn't work. And I think it's mostly amazing that that we were able to do this. You are still a very new hunter.
Amen.
And you went on a tremendous adventure together, and you found yourself in a position to seal the deal multiple times.
Correct.
And
sort of.
that's more than a lot of people can say who've been hunting for a long time.
Yeah, which I was proud of certain things, and I was also, and then the things that I would get frustrated about,
Yeah.
I would step back and be like, this is where these are the things where you tweak how you hunt. Because what did we end up saying? That I am a beginner hunter thrown to the wolves to be an expert hunter. I
Big
was
time.
doing expert hunting things as a beginner hunter. Is
Yeah.
how I felt.
Right.
After all was said and done.
Yeah. And I would 100% agree with
I felt
that.
it, and it showed, and that's
Yeah.
okay.
Totally
I think
okay.
it's part of growing.
Totally fine. Why don't you take a few minutes and just kind of reintroduce yourself and explain sort of your hunting career?
Oh, well, I like you said, I'm new. I still consider myself a new hunter. I started, I would say 3 years ago. Right? I mean, this is
I think
my
it was, yeah.
third season.
Yep.
Started in a tent. That was my first season. I stayed in that tent in the same spot every time. Didn't give a shit if I killed anything. It was just like, okay, let's do this. I want to see what it's like. And then I want to go back to camp and have a couple beers, maybe a cig of toot, Sagret, and hang out, and then do it again the next day, see what happens, blah, blah, blah. Okay?
And you did not, you were, at that point, you were not ready to get into a tree.
No.
You were strictly crossbow hunting.
This was just to see if I enjoyed sitting in the woods doing fucking nothing.
Because up until this point, Adam was like, I don't understand how you can just go sit there and do
I was
nothing.
like, it's not for me. I can't deer hunt. But, so I would say I did get my feet wet a little bit that year. The one day that I shot what I thought was an adult doe, a good deer. This is learning experience 1. So year 1, on the ground, done hunting, unzip my tent, take a pee, get back in the tent to get my shit and walk in, and I look out and there's a deer 10 to 15 yards away staring at me and only getting closer to figure out what I am. At that point, I didn't know anything about deer behavior. All I know is that when I held my crossbow up and looked at her, not only was she so close, she looked huge through that scope. So I shot her, didn't even kill her. It felt cool. Got all you guys out there. We tracked her, bumped her, tracked her, bumped her, and then you had to come in and finish the deal here. You approached from the back door, if you will.
Yeah.
And she was laying there, and you had to shoot her again
Yeah.
for Daddy Adam. So my first deer wasn't even really my first kill, but I got to do the fun part of taking her to Richardson's Meat Processing and dropping her off, and then she was the size of a small dog. And I had to go through all of that embarrassment, but it really wasn't, it all was ultimately a good experience for me to get the feeling of it, to see what tracking's like, to gut the deer, to drop it off at a processing place, to go through all of that, figure out, those were all stepping stones to the next year, which I can't remember if the next year, I think I was still crossbowing.
You were, yep.
But the next year my goal was to get into a tree. So I started doing that a little bit. And still tent hunted a lot. And we went to the Mobile Hunter Road show, and I still really had no idea what was going on with that and didn't even care that much. It was interesting, but I also was like, I'm just trying to figure out what my life is in the woods. And then ended up having a really successful year down there in Hillsdale that year. Killed a couple bucks. I don't know if I got it. I don't think I got a doe that year. And then went into the following season, like, okay, the next season it's got to be compound bow. Got into that. Hunted from trees. Tents a little bit, but mostly got into the trees. And then, so I would say that was like 2.5 years of hunting.
Yeah, you've really only been two and a half years.
Yeah, and then, it was, and fell in love with that, got some does. I did shoot a buck gun hunting. We tracked him for like 3 days, lost him, knew his shoulder was blown out and that he was going to die. So we had to go back and find him later on. You found him for me when you were back there one day. But, so I have actually still yet to shoot a buck with compound bow.
That's true. Yep.
I have 4 does since I started compound bow hunting. But then this year you passed down the XOP Vanish mobile stand. And then I started taking that more seriously. Anyways.
Yes, indeed.
And then that took us to this year to where I was excited to get down to Angel Road, even though we don't have a lot of big bucks on the property this year. It was still, It's still a great area. Deer hunting in general. So getting a doe to put in the freezer, and for me, you know how much
It's actually North Adams.
North Adams, yeah. What did I say?
General.
Oh, General Adams?
No, you said you like hunting in general. I can't help myself. I'm a dad. That was a dad joke.
That was a dad joke.
So listen, I want to interject here. So in last year, I took a leap and went to Kansas by myself. And even though it wasn't successful, it was successful in that I learned a whole bunch being by myself. I learned also that I probably would have been more successful had I had somebody there to hunt with and bounce ideas off of. And so in all of my happiness of hunting in Kansas, I was able to talk Adam into going with me this year. So,
which I knew was like, I wasn't as excited as you are about the trip of Kansas in general, once again. But for me, it was because I didn't know anything.
Sure.
I told you before, I'm like, you were all pumped up, and I'm like, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what it's going to be like.
And you were super intimidated by public land.
Even to this moment, I'm breaking the idea in my, what's holding me back about public land. I don't want to be around people. I don't want to see people.
Yep.
As you learn to hunt, you want to do things by yourself or with your buddies or your dad.
Where you know where they are and what they're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, to where you don't feel stupid making mistakes.
Sure.
So I never had an interest in hunting public land. I just figured I never would. I never wanted to. I would stick to our chunk of private land and be content with that. So that's kind of how I was going into Kansas. But I also was trying to learn as much as I could about locating, just hunting terrain. For me, it was trying to go from last year where I was frustrated, and I can't ever remember the word you used, but I was
desperate.
Yeah, it was desperation. All I wanted to do was get my buck and be like, that was going to make me happy. So I wanted to get back to my idea of just going in the woods. And I would say to you, we're actually hunting the woods, not the deer. We're looking harder and more into where we want to go and what looks good and where they might be and what the terrain is like and what thermals are. And so when we got into Kansas, I was like, okay, we both have Onyx, which you talked me into sort of making that happen because I was kind of waiting.
So I made the decision last year to switch from Hunt Stand to Onyx just because I liked the ease of use for Onyx. Nothing against either one or the other. I just watched people use Onyx. I heard more people talk about Onyx. I gave it a shot. I enjoyed how it functions more. Nothing against one or the other. That's just what I use. I like all 100% of its functions. There's lots of great apps out there people could use. That's just the one that I used. And when I learned to use it and wanted to reference things to Adam, he had to translate it from Onyx to his app, which was Hunt Stand. And so it didn't,
the Virgin app. I didn't have any daddies in me. I didn't buy it.
Yeah. It was all the free version. So he couldn't figure out who owned what property and why. When I would mention someone's name, it was like, whatever. It wasn't as easy to drop a pin and show him something. And so we decided together that we would use Onyx together and we could share pins and share maps. And so when we decided to apply for Kansas and then were successful in getting our Kansas tags, we were both able to go in there and look at all the WIHA, which is the walk-in hunting areas, and drop pins in areas that, by e-scouting looked good, and then could share them with each other. And that way, when we finally went out there, we could actually already have each other's ideas and just start going to these WIHAs and knocking them, either saying, yes, that looks good, or no, that looks like shit.
Which even going back to the first trip out there, I hadn't done as much pin dropping as I wanted to. I had looked at it and been like, okay, once again, if you don't know what it's like out there, you don't have as much of an interest.
And this is not the same area that I hunted in last year, so I didn't really technically know anything about the area that we were going in. I only could base it on what I hunted last year, and it was very different this year in a good way, but just very different.
But for someone new,
but to back up, you mentioned that our first trip to Kansas. I just wanted to say we had decided or had discussed earlier this summer, how can we extend our hunting season? Mm-hmm. And Kansas's season opens early,
the 15th, I think,
earlier than Michigan's, and so we decided, well, we've already got a Kansas tag. Why don't we go out there for a long weekend, hunt, do some sightseeing on these drive around and look at these WIHAs and start crossing some off the list and keeping some on the list. And then while we're there, let's just hunt. And if it works, and if we're both successful, great. We don't have to go back in October. If we're not, worst case scenario is we don't shoot anything and we get to come back later in the year. So we ended up going in the middle of September for a long weekend. So go ahead.
And that's where, as a new hunter, when you're starting to learn about land itself and where, you listen to all these people that have been doing it for a long time and where they find success and how they use the land and what they look for. And you start to look at a map of Kansas and your WIHA properties. It's like daunting in a way. So a lot of times I would sit down and go like, I don't even know where to fucking start.
Yeah.
Like I'm just going to, and then you just put your phone down and you're like, fuck it.
Yeah.
But we ended up going down there and we hunted, but we also walked around. We looked at the WIHAs. We drove by. We, glassed a little bit. Saw some bucks.
Yeah.
And then I got a feel for the land out there and what it was really going to be like. And where, they say there's a river here, there's actually no water.
That's just it. Kansas has been in a 2-year drought. So you look at Onyx, and Onyx has ponds and swamps and rivers, and they ain't there. And they probably haven't been there for 2 years.
Right. But,
you drop these pins into your app based on satellite information that is obsolete. And that is really... that's not necessarily a knock against Onyx. I don't know how you improve that, but the bottom line is we had a ton of pins that didn't pan out.
Which is, I think, when you actually, if you look at it, that's what the point was.
Mm-hmm.
To go down there and pick a spot, sit there and see what happens. For me, it allowed me to, after that weekend, go home, look at all these same properties and dig deeper into them and say, okay, because fast forward to the next trip, I had a ton of pins that I had shared with you, and I felt like we tried a lot of these areas out, and they ended up being fairly successful.
Sure.
Which we'll get into that later, but it was just interesting because even going down, we didn't have any luck killing deer that first trip.
Or the second trip.
But for me, correct. But for me, it was getting my feet wet.
Yeah, it did.
And I didn't realize that was the biggest thing for me at the time was, I was still going down there to hunt, but in reality, it was more for me to take away, like, okay, the drive sucks, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it was going to be as long as it was, but it's a long fucking drive.
Mm-hmm.
But that's okay. But once I left there, I'm like, okay, now I know that we're not going to be bombarded with all kinds of, like, to me, you'd walk out there, there'd be 100 people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, it really is just like in the middle of nowhere.
Totally.
So, and after dropping all those pins, I was a little more excited to go down there and actually put it all to work and see
Mm-hmm.
what happens. So
Adam hunts for 2.5 years and then jumps balls deep into Kansas for in his third season ever. He is out of state in a totally foreign land. Like Adam and I are flat. Like I said this in my last podcast. I'm a flatlander. Like there are some very slight elevation changes in the land at the property we hunt, but not like there is elsewhere. And especially at my Illinois place and in Kansas, the topography is so different.
Which I also, that first weekend, I found out the same thing. I went down there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to really go deep. Like I'm going to go to these locations that I might have to travel through some really thick, hard shit to get to. Because that's when I realized in Kansas, the beans aren't to your hips.
No.
It's up over your fucking head.
Yeah, big beans.
And they go all the way to the edge of a field, and then you can't just sit on the edge of the field because there's 10-foot thicket or weeds before the woods. And then you get in the woods and there is no trees to sit in.
Nothing you can climb into anyway.
Or you could sit in a tree, but you're not going to be able to shoot the field.
Yeah.
So it was just a totally different thing. And the first sit, Bret was waiting for me for like an hour to crawl my ass out of the woods. And I'm walking out at night down this river that's dry, this dry creek bed. And I'm crawling. My mobile stand's getting caught on shit. My lights are splashing, or my lights are shining on these spiders that are, 6 inches by 6 inches, hanging face high between these trees.
There are hockey puck sized spiders in Kansas.
And I'm like,
Adam does just like I don't like snakes. Adam doesn't like spiders, and them sons of bitches were big.
I just didn't. So that first night, I crawled out of there soaking wet with sweat because it had been like 90 degrees. It was 60 in the morning, 90 during the day.
Mm-hmm.
I crawled out of there and I'm like, I know that a lot of these big hunters promote or they push going deep and working hard.
Embracing the suck, bro.
These places that deer don't exist.
Embrace the
people
suck.
won't go.
Yeah.
But I ain't going to do that again. Not like that. I'm going to figure out another way to do this because it's not worth it to me.
Yeah.
There's ways to get back into those spots and not crawl through the shit I crawled through that night. So anyways, I would say I was ready and excited to get down there for the hunt. And I also had this kind of like kerfuffle in the back of my mind where I'm like, you got to realize you haven't shot a buck at all with your compound bow yet.
That's true. But you worked your ass off all year.
Do you
shooting
really think you're going to go to Kansas and blow out a massive buck for your first ever compound kill on a buck?
It could happen.
And I'm like, you know what? Don't be an asshole to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, go down there and just get out there and you learn how to hunt. Learn how to hunt hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
Not just like, hey, I'm going to show up at our private property, walk, 20 acres, 15 acres out to a stand that's ready to go, get up there and take a nap before it gets to be, So anyways, there was a lot of negative going. It was just a lot of mental prep for me.
I've said this before to myself, like I've maybe got 20 good hunting seasons left to where I can really push it. Mm-hmm. I'll be 62 at that point. And I just can't imagine myself, hiking 2 miles out into the wilderness at 62. Right. Maybe I will. I don't know. But I just imagine I already feel 62 some days, and I can't imagine what I'm going to feel like when I'm actually 62. And so I'm going to do all the hard stuff while I still physically can. And if that means, maybe I'm not the world's best hunter, I'm going to put myself in position to do what I want to do and work as hard as I can possibly work at it so that I can shoot deer like that down there on the fucking ground. And if that means I got to spend a little extra money or get up a little extra early and make myself uncomfortable for 3 months of the year, I'm going to do it because I probably only have 20 good seasons left to really push it. And then at that point, maybe I go sit in a redneck blind with a fucking buddy heater and only shoot big bucks with a fucking rifle. I don't know.
200 yards away.
200 yards away. But for right now, while I can, I'm going to push it.
Right.
And I'm going to push it hard. Push it real good.
And see, I kind of think that
No, you didn't want to take that. You didn't want to take that and run with it. That was a. I teed that one up for you, bro.
Was that salt and pepper?
That was salt and pepper. No, push it real good. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah, but that's like one of my favorite workout songs.
Okay, all right.
Marky Mark got one too. What was his big hit back in the day?
I don't know. Sorry, we got sidetracked.
I'm mixing it up with LL Cool J too. I just picture dudes with their shirt off, but that takes me back to back the good old days. Anyways, no, I like women. I'm just saying.
So you decided stop being so hard on yourself. You can do this. You're a big daddy.
Yeah.
You can shoot big bucks. You can walk out. And I pushed Adam this year. I said, listen, man, I know that you don't believe me, but walking to where you're going to hunt with a stand on your back is not as easy as you think it is. And so I gave him that XOP and I gave him a set of 20-inch Lone Wolf custom gear compact or double steps. And I said, put this on your back and hike around town. Just get used to the weight because you got your stand, which the XOP Vanish is not a light stand. And then you got a backpack with all your shit. And it's just get used to walking with this because it is not what, like Adam keeps saying, you walk across a 15-acre field and you climb into a preset stand and you sit there and take a nap before the sun comes up. It ain't that.
Right.
And so he did. He put the work in. He would come over and he would practice putting it up on I have one of those super smooth power poles in my front yard for the utility company. And so he would come over and he would practice setting it up and he would ask me, what did I do wrong? Or what should I do here? And I would share tips with him and he was putting in the work. So Adam really did want to make it as successful as possible. He would come over and shoot his bow all the time. I mean, he was dialed.
Well, my goal was to just be able to go to Kansas, be able to walk out there and put a stand up in the morning, in the dark, and be ready to shoot at something.
Right.
That was it.
Yep.
Still not fully knowing what to expect. So anyways.
Right. And so we went out in September and we pre-scouted and we hunted and we didn't have any success, but we did see bucks that first morning. Mm-hmm. And then I think we saw does. Yeah. But we were never really in the game on anything like we were when we went back.
No, but you had hunted, fast forwarding to our actual Kansas trip, the very first morning we got there, we went right out and hunted.
Yeah.
And
so
that was a chunk of property that you scouted and hunted while you were down there. I had never done it yet.
Yeah, Adam would drop me off in the morning at this particular property, and it was a couple hundred acres, and it was solid beans, and there was a river, a creek that ran through it that was wet, so not a dry creek, but it was a wet creek. The other side was a little bit of cut corn. There was a couple tree lines. It also had a dead buck, that someone had shot and cut the head off and dumped it. So I'm like, there's definitely deer out here. I mean, that's a piece of shit move.
The dude that lives around the corner has a fence around
chain link fence around his house.
It has 50 deer skulls around.
Yeah, buck heads, like Euro mounts.
He just
every 10 feet.
Wrap my
it's
fence
crazy. So anyway,
we know there's deer here.
Yeah. And so we scouted that. I hunted it a couple times. There's tracks everywhere. And I'm like, there's got to be bucks out here. This is a huge piece of property. There's huge pieces of property that abut it. And I never saw anybody. So I wanted to hunt there anyway, when we went back. And so we left Clarkston, or we left Fenton. Did I pick you up at your house?
6 o'clock or something.
I picked you up at your house.
I don't remember.
On October the 29th after dinner, because that's my youngest daughter's birthday. I wanted to spend the day with her. I picked Adam up in the afternoon, and we drove all night long again. We were both like, where are we going to hunt? Where are we going first?
Yeah, where do you want to go first? Are we going to go hunt in the morning? Are we going to go check in and hunt in the evening? It's going to be 20 degrees.
Yeah, we couldn't check into the Airbnb till 3. So we could either scout or we could hunt.
We went straight to this property that you knew.
And we boiled it down. That's where we wanted to go. So there was actually a property to the south where Adam had seen some bucks, or he'd seen a buck hitting a scrape, and then I bumped that same buck while I was fucking around on the ground. So it was between that property and the property we ended up going to.
You talking about the one that had the beans were
that
all
we
gone?
hunted for where you were the most successful this time. It was between those two.
Yes.
It was between those two properties that we were going to hunt. And so we ended up going to the one we ended up going to, and we drove straight through the night, and we got there just in time to get dressed and go hunting, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think there was much time to dick around.
And I had fallen asleep. It was you were driving. I drove in the middle of the night, and then you drove early in the morning.
Yeah.
And then we arrived, and I had was still kind of waking up, and I was like, "Oh, dude, I gotta go."
Yeah,
out, and it's like 22 degrees.
And Adam had not been to the property. I was the only one that hunted it in September, right. So I was pretty familiar with where I was going and what it looked like. They had harvested some of the beans, and so I told Adam where I thought he should go, and I had decided to go somewhere I did not go.
So I had some pins there.
Yeah, Adam had some pins and some places he wanted to check out. But again, doing things first time in the dark in an unfamiliar place is super hard to do.
Right.
No matter who you are or where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
And so we get dressed. He goes on his merry way towards those pins. I tell him the best possible, because I had been over there, the best possible route to get over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I go the complete other direction and loop around the far end of this particular weehaw, and there is a finger of trees that are along a drainage that goes out into these bean fields, and it's like probably 200 yards from the wood line. It extends that far out into these fields. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, those deer are going to probably walk the wood line and go to that and then take that into the woods. And so I went and I set up in where I thought I picked a pretty good spot. Like, the beans didn't go all the way to the woods. So I was set up just off of that. The wind was kind of blowing me back into the other field. I thought I was in a pretty good spot. And then where did you end up going, Adam?
Well, so I got out of the truck sort of half asleep, freezing ass cold, and not really knowing where I was going, and I started walking exactly where you told me, made it over there, cut through this pocket, like, I don't know, same thing. It was like a tiny finger of woods that shot out from the north side of the property, crossed the river because there was a little spot to cross, bang up over, and then I'm standing there right about where we had talked about me sitting, and there's private property signs not where I thought they were. So I was already on the wrong side of them, so I jumped back over, like, it was like 5 yards.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so I can sit right here. This is it. And I'm in the dark. You know, I've got a set of eyes on me over here, which I'm sure was just a coyote watching me. And I'm looking around at the ground, and it's this cut cornfield. I believe that far field was cut corn. And it looks so far to the other side, because it crossed my mind. I'm like, do you want to walk all the way over there? Because you're interested in that area. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, it looks like a mile.
It was pretty far over there.
But I also couldn't see that well. It was dark. And I don't know where the fuck I am. So I'm looking at this spot I can sit, and I'm going, man, there's no tracks on the ground. I don't see any scrapes, nothing. So I walked backwards, the same way I came, back into the woods, and I'm looking around for a tree to sit in. I'm like, I don't like it here. I don't feel good about this. Mm-hmm. I don't see anything that is making me want to sit here. So I walk. I'm like, you know what? We park right by this little spot of woods. And I'm like, there's a part of me that has listened to people talk about sitting right by the damn road and killing a big buck. I'm like, first sit, make it easy for you because you have no idea where you're at. Go back by the truck, go into the woods right there and sit around that. There's a pond in there. I'm like, go sit around the water. Like, they're all dehydrated, right?
Yeah.
So I go in there, and I would say I'm more than frustrated. I'm kind of pissed off. This first morning, I'm like, this is going to be a tough fucking week. Mm-hmm. I'm already pissed off. I can see that it's about to be gray light, and I haven't even taken my stand off my back. So I pick a tree, and I think there's a big field behind me, and I climb up the tree. I get it all set up. I've already burned out one headlamp. I'm on my second one, and I'm like motherfucking everything. And I get up there, and I finally sit down, and I'm like, whatever. Let's just fucking see what happens. Maybe this will be it. Mm-hmm. So I decided to sit there, and it was in that little bit of woods around that pond, and the sun comes up, and I look behind me, and it's not a field, it's the road. Yeah. I am literally, there's the road, a ditch, and the woods, and I'm in like one of the first trees.
Yeah.
But then I would say within an hour,
there's tracks all over there.
I look behind me, and there's a buck jumping across the street. It was a spike.
Uh-huh.
He jumps across the ditch on the other side, walks across the street, walks right under me, and he's just hanging out. I'm like,
yeah,
that spike is as big as some of the bucks that I would consider shooting in
body-wise.
Adams. Yeah, he
body-wise.
had a huge body.
Yeah.
And just little spikes.
Yep.
I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So I watched him for a while, and I didn't end up seeing anything else, but I'm like, it's a good sign that they're at least moving.
Yeah.
Like I was happy that I picked somewhere that happened to be where bucks move.
Hell yeah.
So I felt
absolutely.
like I could at least check that box. Like, okay, you're not a total idiot.
Right.
And I'm sure bucks move through here.
Yeah.
But they just didn't that morning. And then a truck drove behind me, and I could tell he was kind of starting. I'm like, people are going to start showing up here because it's the week before.
It's a big property. It's got all the things. It's got water. It's got ag. It's got woods. It's got everything. So like, there's no doubt in my mind that other people are going to want to hunt at this weehaw. So when we wanted to hunt it, we had to make sure we were there early because I wanted to be the first truck there. If someone's truck is there, I'm turned off by that. In fact, we didn't hunt there the second day because there was a truck there. Mm-hmm. And so whatever, totally fine. Or maybe it was the afternoon.
Too. Like I was like shivering cold that morning.
We hadn't really had like real cold weather even here in Michigan, and we timed a cold front in Kansas absolutely perfectly. Like it rained almost the whole ride down, and then the next even like late morning or super early morning, it had dried up and it was just the temp was dropping. So we got there just in time.
Don't know him either.
And so Adam sets up there off the road. Like I said, I had set up in my saddle on the finger out into that was sticking way out in the woods. And I thought these deer are going to be moving across this and using this drainage to go down into the woods back where this creek goes and work their way, and follow this wood line. And I'm not kidding you. The first morning at like 7:38, maybe like right after, like 10 minutes after first light, if that, I look over and there's this big body, dark chocolatey brown deer in the beans walking right at me. And I say right at me, I mean right in my direction. And he looks like he's going to be 20 yards in front of me. But the problem is my wind is blowing that way. And then I get a look, and he's got antlers, and he's got big antlers. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to seal the fucking deal opening my first morning sit in Kansas. Totally fine. I was totally fine with it. I was going to be permanent cameraman for Uncle Adam the rest of the week. Totally fine with it. And that buck jumps across the rest of the beans and works his way into the thick grasses and actually started cutting at an angle, which took him into my wind. And it probably would have been okay. There's a lot of things I did wrong in this situation. I felt like I needed to come across the bridge of my saddle, and I didn't. I probably could have chilled on the correct side of my tree and just swung further right and taken a shot. But I tried to bring my bow, which is on the right side of the tree since I'm left-handed, over my bridge of my saddle. And when I did that, the top cam got caught in a branch and snapped it. And he heard that and looked right at me. And then I think he was probably sort of in my wind cone and was like, 1 + 1 = danger. I got to get the fuck out of here. And he literally turned around and ran out of my life forever. But I did get him on camera, and he was fucking big.
Yeah, he was a
dandy. That was a big, thick daddy. He was a real big buck. And, I learned that I was too anxious. I probably should have chilled out.
I feel like that's been the postal motto.
It is. It totally is, because I was so excited.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, man, this is going to fucking work. But again, I should have let him tell me what he was going to do. I should have let him dictate. I should have just left my bow where it was, because he was already heading in that direction. Mm-hmm. It's not like he was going to curl up the fucking field. He was going to go that way. I should have just held my ground and waited to see if I could shoot on the right side. Anyway, I was too far out on that finger. I should have been closer to the woods. That was what I learned. And number 2, I should have just been more patient, let the buck tell me where he was going, and I probably would have been able to seal the deal the first morning in Kansas. But I didn't. Mm-hmm. But I saw a big buck. And so again, first morning in Kansas, Adam and I are on bucks. Good sign. Mm-hmm. Really good sign. Mm-hmm. And so what did we do that afternoon? We went and...
I'm trying to think if that was when I ran into the first big buck I had.
Yeah, I think it is because
the next day.
I think it was that afternoon because we tried to hunt the same spot that afternoon.
Did you have the dog problem that night?
Yeah, we tried to hunt the same spot, but someone's truck was there.
Yeah,
and so we went over to where Adam saw bucks that when we were there in September,
right, and they were way out in the bean field
next to a wildlife area. Yeah,
and I'm like, I was interested in that weehaw because it was massive. It had a creek. Well, actually, it wasn't a creek. It was a massive river that ran on the far west side of it. So it would be if you were to walk in from the road, it's the backest part.
The backest.
Mm-hmm. And then right up next to it was a massive wildlife preserve.
Which was huntable. Like you could hunt it. Yeah.
Which the only concern I would have is how many dudes or chickettes are hunting that wildlife preserve. It had a little building you could park at. So I'm like, this is probably
and trails. Like I think it had groomed trails.
It's probably a hot to trot.
Yep.
Public area. Mm-hmm. But I was like, whatever. Let's see what happens. That was kind of my thing. I'm like, let's just immerse yourself in public hunting.
I told my wife that I didn't care that the dog was going to bark. But now I fucking care that the dog's up there barking, and I'm not going to be able to stop her. So I apologize to all the listeners. That dog ain't going to stop barking, so you're just going to have to listen to it.
There's a bunch of kids running around here, too.
No, I think there's nobody up there. That's why.
Oh, well, that would explain it.
So anyway, go ahead. So we tried to go hunt the same property that afternoon, but there was a truck there. So we went to where Adam had seen bucks in September.
Right.
And we drop Adam off there, or we park. And I walked across the street.
We parked at the building.
We parked at the building, and I ended up going across the street where Adam got caught in the creek bed trying to get out that first night.
You were the same property, but a slit bit north, but I think you went back and kind of hunted the same area.
Yeah.
You took the much better route than I did that first weekend. And then I walked.
Well, the beans were down, so it was way easier to walk across that field.
Right. Yeah, that was what it was. So, because you couldn't walk the bean out the edge of the beans the day I tried to, and it was like I can't get through here.
Yeah.
And I hunted the other side of the road where we parked, and I walked down the road a little bit. That was like a quarter of a mile, and then turned left, and I went all the way down to where I saw that buck in the corner where the beans are all gone now, and there is like a corner of the field where it's a path that you could essentially take a car out there from the wildlife preserve, and then it hits what I would describe as like I kind of describe it like the black walnuts in North Adams, where it's just you walk down into a ditch. First of all, you walk up. There's a massive run in and out of this thing. So I walk down that into the ditch, and it's a dry creek bed. And you get in there after you get through like sort of like the thicket. It's this lowland flat area, and it's very vast, and it's all just bare trees, not the animal. And then this dry creek bed, and then to the south is it's like taller grasses, but easy to walk through.
Yeah.
And then it goes all the way back, not much further back, but to the big river. And I thought it was a lot closer to me, but it was a little bit further back than I thought, probably like a couple 100 yards. And I, once again, struggled. I was starting to get frustrated because I'm like, man, I'm sweating and it's cooling off. So I know what that's going to mean. And I picked a tree and I'm like, I get up to it and I'm like, no, this is on way more of an angle and I'm wide open. And it was to hunt the creek bed because I think they travel down those dry creek beds. I mean, there's tracks.
Yeah.
So then I walk back to where I entered a little bit and I pick another tree and I'm like, oh, this has one of these vines on it that's like got, that is going to cut my throat.
Oh, yeah.
If I bump it. And I'm like, I don't want to set up on this tree. So anyways, it was like, once again, an hour of me walking back there and trying to find the place to sit. So then I just go back And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to sit in this taller grass back here. It's a little further, but I can see the creek bed, but I can also see out towards the river and see what happens. So I found a bigger tree that was bare and straight, and I just got up in there. And I was like 3 sticks up, I would say, which is, I usually hunt about 2, but I would get up, I'd set up so that I put my 3rd stick up, and it was like the 3rd stick, top of the 3rd stick was right where my stand was at. And I don't know what time it was, but it wasn't horribly long after that. I had a big buck walking at me. Like, he was walking the proper way, I would say, from where the river was, coming into like where the run was that went out into the beans. And I'm like, holy shit, I got a big buck. Like, this is like, here we go. Like, let's make it happen. And I'm like, so he gets to this point where he can either continue to walk at me and be in a shooting lane, or he can turn and go to the run out of the woods and into the trails and into the beans and out, whatever. So he gets behind a tree and I get ready and I'm like, okay, go a little bit further. Because he stopped.
They always do.
Can't see him at all. I couldn't even see his ass. It was like 2 trees were just like situated enough and like cockeyed of each other to where it was blocking his entire body, but I could see the tip of his antlers bending down. It was a shooter.
Yeah.
And he would have been about, I'd say 25 yards, 30 yards in a perfect lane to shoot. And then he just wasn't going. And I'm like, so I bend over to look and take that risk of him noticing my movement. And I see him walking like behind those 2 trees to go out.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, shit. I'm like, this could be my only shot. And I don't know why I get like that. I'm already heart beating, like shit in my pants, a little bit of a hard on. And he's going to he gets, and I had this conversation with me in my head. I'm like, okay, you could take a shot at him in a little bit. It's not a shot you would normally take at home. But since you're in Kansas, take the fucking shot.
Yeah.
Don't ever get to the point out here to where you are mad that you didn't try.
Sure.
So he gets to the point where the low land starts to go up to the upper, I don't know what you call it, upper land.
Okay.
And it starts to get thicker in there, a lot of smaller trees and shit like that. And he gets to a point where I know I've got shit hanging in the way, but I'm like, okay, there's a tiny little hole that goes to his body. And I sort of squatted down and bent to my right. And I got him in my peep just enough to where I could see. And I'm like, fuck it. So I shot. Didn't even hit it. Like, it wasn't even remotely close to hitting where I thought I would hit. I couldn't even tell you if it went behind him, under him, or over him. But I could see my lighted knock. And I'm like, okay, looks like it's past him in the sort of uphill.
Yeah.
And he just sort of looking my way like he didn't even give a shit. Probably has never seen someone, at least not seen someone back there. And he just kind of looks around and then he takes a couple steps forward. So I reload an arrow and I feel like I'm making all kinds of noise and moving around and he's not doing a damn thing.
Yeah. How far away is he at this
I think
point?
he was 50 yards.
Yeah. Okay. That's pretty far.
Yeah. But it's hard to, when all this shit's going on, I think I misjudge a lot at that distance. 20 yards is something you shouldn't screw up, but like,
when they're 50 yards is a poke, man, for anybody.
Fuck, he could have been 40 and I'm shooting 50.
That's true.
I reload an arrow, take another shot, miss him. And then he sort of gets to the point where he's like, I don't know what's happening. I don't love it. I don't know what's going on. And he just kind of moseys off, but stays in the woods. He doesn't go out like I thought he was going to do. And he stays back there and he starts to circle around by the Dry Creek Red where I was originally going to set up. And anyways, I tried grunting him in and he was curious, looking my way, and he would slap his hoof around. And he ended up trying to figure it out, I think, because I saw him then back towards the river. He circled way out, like 75 yards. I could see him circling, looking my way, trying to figure it out. And then I watched him walk off, like south of me, back into the wildlife preserve.
That's so funny how you hear people talk about that all the time. It's like they'll loop around downwind 100 yards to try to figure out what the hell that was.
Yeah.
And this big, when you're out, deer do deer shit, man. It's cool to see. I mean, it's cool to see that that's actually what they're doing.
And so my mind is going, why the hell didn't you hit him? Like, what's wrong with you? But then I'm also going, you knew you were taking a crazy ass shot.
Yeah.
And you got to, like, he didn't see you. So you didn't really blow everything.
Sure.
At least we hope.
Right.
Because I'd like to sit here again.
Mm-hmm.
But like what went wrong and what could have happened and would have happened, should have happened anyways. Should I have not shot? But anyways, I have to sit there and look at my lighted Nox, 2 arrows down with 2 more arrows in my quiver for the rest of the night. But I got to see there was a lot of deer out there. There was some does that were walking around and spikes and a 4-point and all back in there. And I really believe that they were either bedding back there by the river or they were crossing that big river, because I further in the week noticed that there's a spot they can cross.
Yeah.
It is not crossable. And then there's like a 5-acre parcel of the wildlife preserve that they could be living back on. So I don't know. But anyways, that's where I sat.
And so that same afternoon, I had gone over to where Adam had previously hunted in September. I had gone out into what I would call like a little cattail marsh area that I thought looked very heavily traveled. Again, I don't know by what or by who. I think I found out later, but I couldn't find a tree that I wanted to get in. So I literally was on the, like a foot off the ground in a shitty little tree back in the cattails where I could shoot a field. I could shoot a standing bean field. I could shoot one of these runs passing through the cattails, like whatever. It's just, I was totally fine doing that. It was not ideal, but I thought this could still work. And then at some point I heard like a bunch of racket coming my way. Like something's running through the fucking woods and I can hear it. And so I grabbed my bow and stood up, and it was 2 fucking dogs, like big dogs. And they just came barreling through through the woods to my right. I don't know where from, through the cattails over into the woods. And then it's like I don't know if they were actually chasing something or if they just stumbled upon some raccoon or something, some varmint, some wood derelict. I don't really know. But they chased something up a fucking tree, and it sounded like they killed it. Like they just sounded like they just fucking tore it to shreds.
And we've already realized that dogs in Kansas
are fucking obnoxious.
Are almost like their own species.
We might not have realized this at this point yet. Like this was maybe the first dog.
Well, we had the dog the first weekend that tried to jump in your truck in the middle in the morning when we made a corner by
where I rounded a corner. It came flying out of a cornfield.
And it chased your truck down the road.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
So we knew, and then we had already seen dogs like in the middle of the road, and they just kind of hang out.
Yeah, they're not fenced in out there, so they just kind of run wild.
In the middle of fucking nowhere.
So, I'm sitting there, I'm like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck was that? And I think, where are these fucking dogs going to go? How long are they going to hang out here? And I can see them. They're just walking around like, fuck, my night's ruined. Like, these dogs are just hanging out here. Surely no deer are going to come fucking through here. Well, then these fucking 2 dogs start coming back towards me. And again, I'm a foot off the ground. And I'm not like afraid of dogs, but these 2 dogs have no collars. They are big. They seem bloodthirsty. Like I think they just killed something out in the woods. What am I going to do? Like I don't have a gun. I could shoot one, but what do I do to the other one?
Stab one with your arrow, pull it out, and stab the other one.
And I thought about that. I'm like, I could just take my arrows in my hands and stab them. And so these dogs walked probably 20 feet in front of me, and I was standing there with my bow in my hand, and those motherfuckers, like I said, I'm a foot off the ground. Those dogs never saw me. They had no fucking clue I was there, but they stood in front of me at 20 feet, looking off into the woods for like what seemed like an eternity, but it was probably 3 minutes. And then they just slowly walked back from the direction they came. And I said, fuck this. Once I was sure they were gone and they weren't going to hear me get down and walk, come running at me. Once I was sure they were gone, I packed my shit up and I was back at the truck before dark. Like that fucking totally, my first night ruined by these fucking dogs. So that could that could theoretically happen anywhere. Like there's lots of people that post on Facebook, especially in like these Michigan hunting groups where it's like wild dogs running through my shit. Like I know our buddy Jake
to hunt or whatever. just posted a
He
dog
did.
in the field chasing the deer away.
Yeah, and then Jake, Jake,
Yeah.
he has horses that go into his fucking shit
People
all the
taking
time.
pictures,
Yeah.
pictures and
Yeah,
shit.
people having like a homecoming photo shoot in his fucking field. Like this shit could happen anywhere. But of course, I spend all this money to go hunt out of in another state, and it happens to me, and so you
at
get
what
sort of
point
butthurt.
Do you get with dogs? So at what point with, let's just say these two dogs, no collars, bloodthirsty, to where they're coming at you, do you decide that you're either going to shoot them or see what happens?
Oh no, I if they would have turned towards me, they were dying. I was going to kill them.
Okay.
I don't care. They're not my dogs.
Right. I just didn't know if there's a spot. Do they get 10 feet away?
I also don't care if there's a family and they have two little kids and these were their
Well, then keep them at your fucking house.
these were their special dogs, their special needs kids dogs. Well, fuck them dogs. Fuck you and fuck your dogs.
Yeah.
I'm killing them.
I just saw a picture of the guy's legs who got all bitten.
Yeah.
by dogs.
Yes. Fuck your dogs if you can't keep them in your yard, you don't care about them that much.
Yeah. Especially if you know that that's a public area for hunting.
I have a family to go back to. Fuck you and fuck your dogs.
I wondered if there's a thing in your head where you're like, okay, they get to this point, I'm going to have to shoot them.
Well, if they turned at me, I was going to shoot one anyway. Like if they turned and I realized that they could see me, one was going down.
Yeah.
And then I was going to have to figure out what I was doing with the second one that was surely going to continue to barrel at me. So it was not good. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
It was not good. Like last year I was worried about coyotes because there were so many where I was last year. Last year I was in Unit 7. There were so many fucking coyotes. Like I had them walk me out to my stand one morning. Like I was walking a fence line and they were 75 yards to my right, parallel to me, my whole walk to my tree stand. Like I would shine my lights over and they would look at me and then they would drop down. And then I would walk some more and I'd look over and they were they were just walking. They were literally escorting me to my stand. Thoughtful, unnecessary. So that's day one in Kansas.
Yeah, I'm on a high and you're on a low.
Yeah, but in the morning I was on a high and you were on a low.
Correct.
So it was, overall great. We go check into our Airbnb. Beautiful Airbnb. Loved it. Too fragrant.
Yeah, that was a learning experience on its own.
I did tell her that, by the way.
Oh, did you?
She didn't answer me after I said that, but I did tell her, like, hey, just FYI, if you know people are coming, do not use so many fragrances in the Airbnb because I smelled like whatever that was for way too long.
So that's like our number one thing. And we walk in.
Scent control.
Control. And we walk in and we're like, holy shit.
Yeah. Get your shit out of here. Like, get your clothes out of here.
Yeah.
Get your shit out of here. Like, everything that you want to take in the woods, do not bring it in this fucking house.
Yeah. So we were like mad dashing our stuff through to the garage.
Yeah.
And not opening it up and keeping everything.
Thank God that was there, though. That was nice.
Yeah. So it was a really nice place.
Super nice.
Like, and then my thought was, we'll just be able to wash our stuff in the washer and dryer, but we couldn't even use the washer because it was almost like they were dumping
fabric softener
those
and shit.
Smelly seeds and those smelly pellets in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I stuck my head in there and then I ran a wet site, I ran water through it.
Just to try and clean it out.
And it just smelled so fragrant.
So bad.
So we ended up hand washing our stuff every night. Not every night, but a couple times in the sink.
Yep. We would clog the drain and we would put, I was actually using dead downwind concentrate as soap. And hand washing whatever we needed to in that sink, and then the dryer didn't stink, but we were using the dryer.
We were using the dryer, yeah. So
anyway, it was kind of crazy, but it was a very nice Airbnb. We go there our first night. It's got a full kitchen. Adam brings a bunch of food, so we were able to cook for ourselves, and we ate really well. So that was very nice. But we had to get up for a day two. And where did we hunt day two? Same place we hunted day one.
I think, holy cow, I don't know. Nothing must have happened day two.
I think we hunted we hunted the same spot day two.
I feel like we went to McDonald's. Oh, I think I sat in the same spot in the morning where I saw the buck.
Yeah.
Because I ended up seeing a bunch of deer again, and there were little cheese dicks and a 4-point chasing around some girls.
Day two is not the day I pooped in the woods, is it? Or was that day two?
No.
That was day three?
That was when I walked out with you in the morning, day three.
Okay.
Yeah. Which wasn't the only time.
No, I pooped
in the woods is not talked about.
I pooped in the woods twice. Adam pooped in the woods once.
Our morning routine is unfortunately, I feel like it takes way too long for me just to make sure I poop enough.
Yeah.
In the morning.
Uh-huh.
I like to shower and use the dead downwind soap to get the stank off me.
Sure.
But my biggest thing in the morning is to get the shit out. We were in an Airbnb that we didn't really realize it was 45 minutes away from all of our
No,
properties.
man. And that's part of the deal is I chose an Airbnb to get a good rate based on 2022's WeHas. And, they change them from year to year to year. And I think the WeHas changed. And so I think our location was just a little further away than we wanted it to be.
Yeah. So we weren't.
Shame on
we
me.
never saw the Airbnb in light.
Never.
We
Not
were
one
leaving
time.
at 5 a.m, if not earlier. And then
we were back after 8.
We were back after 8 in the dark. So, but the biggest thing there is in Kansas, it's so vast and there's not a lot of shit, pun intended. You can't just go, oh, hey, let's get down midday and go take a poop somewhere.
Yeah.
So my goal in the morning is to sit on the toilet twice within our 45-minute time frame. But anyways, yeah.
We were pretty good about that.
Yeah.
I was not feeling well. I definitely had an upper respiratory infection on the way there, which Adam then got. But anyway, so I spent the first half of my Kansas trip with an upper respiratory infection. And so anybody that's ever had that knows it's really hard to not cough in the woods. It's really fucking hard. And when you're trying to be quiet and calm, and you are gurgling in your chest because you're holding in a cough, it's really miserable.
Oh, yeah.
And so I got a belly full of snot and vitamins and all this shit to try to make me feel better. Old Indian cherry bark and zincs and I'm loaded up. And then 2 plates of fucking spicy buffalo chicken with rice, and it's like, anyway, day 2, again, we're in deer. We had bucks every day. I had seen bucks on day 2. I had actually sat in the morning and didn't see much. So then I got down and I looped around. We went back to the same property that we hunted day 1. Day 2, I actually looped around, walked down through the river and out the other side where Adam was going to go that first morning. And I was able to see deer. They were way off in the neighbor's property, but I was able to glass 2 bucks sparring out on the edge of the woods on the side of the cornfield. I couldn't grunt. I mean, I don't know that they were shooters, but they were pretty far away. One maybe.
So I have a feeling you dropped me off that morning on the road, not at the parking lot, so that I didn't have to walk down the road. I could cut straight down the field into the hunting spot I wanted to hunt.
Yeah, that could be.
And then you drove down to. Because I did not hunt that
second day
spot the next day. No. That's the day I sat down at the end.
No, that was the day 3. That was day 3 when I shit in the woods.
Correct.
Yeah. So I didn't see much until I got down that day in the morning, and then I don't even know where we hunted that afternoon.
You had walked around and you found a bunch of
rubs and scrapes. Yeah, that's true. I did.
And you kind of came up with this idea that he was possibly running from the island at the tip of that.
Yeah, so there were 2 tree islands out in the middle of the bean fields, and I was thinking, so that first morning, I think he was probably sleeping on one of those, and that was actually headed to the woods that morning, and that's why I didn't see him coming until he was already in my periph. And then I think what he did was he worked to the edge of this woods, and then I think he worked parallel to the river, because that's where all the rubs and scrapes were, big rubs, bigger rubs than I've ever seen in my life. And then I think at the corner of the river, it was shallow. And then I think the deer, because I watched them later, I think they all sort of go down in that shallow spot and they cross and they go into the neighbor's property. Mm-hmm. That's what I think he was doing. I think that was his routine. And I think that first morning, I think I interrupted it to the extent I never saw him again.
Right.
And so that second morning, like I said, I didn't see anything in stand, but I saw some deer on my way back out. And then what did you do?
In the night?
No, that morning.
I think I went right back out to where I was the night before with I shot at that buck.
Okay, yeah. Yes.
I could tell that the young bucks were starting to rut, but I don't think the mature bucks were yet.
Yeah.
We were a little bit early. So I once again saw some deer, enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But nothing to shoot at. So, and I think at that point I was trying to, I think I sat in the exact same tree, but then I was trying to find different trees. I'm I know I can get closer to where these deer are coming from. But anyways, I think that was it. And then I walked out and you would have picked me up.
Yeah. And then
I stayed there that night. I hunted there again that night to hopefully catch the buck doing the exact same thing.
And and then did I hunt the other side of that public that night, that wilderness that second night?
I think so.
Yeah, I think I did too. I actually had hunted on the other side of the wilderness preserve But I had hiked in to try and find some.
It looked great.
Yeah, I had tried to find some tracks. We had determined that the deer were eating. They were eating in the fields in the east where the sun came up, and then they were eating in the fields on the west where the sun was going down because it was so cold still.
Right.
And
sticking in two tree lines.
I didn't really see anything that night. I had seen a little buck making a scrape, chasing a doe. Nothing too extravagant. And then the third morning, we both went back to the same property we've been hunting in the mornings to try and catch up with this fucking deer. I decided I'm going to get even closer to the woods. I had picked out a tree. Our timeline is screwed up. I just realized it. So it was the second morning that I shit in the woods. The third morning is where, anyway, the second morning, Adam follows me out to the corner, and I go right to that finger, and Adam stays there.
There was like a pinch point between the fields.
Between fields.
I'm either going to hunt the south side of this, as long as I'm not in the tree is not in private, which it was. So I went back to the very tip of that like finger and sat like 3 feet off the ground and watched the pinch point.
And the reason that I know that is because after that first morning where I got busted, I went and picked a tree to sit in for the next morning and took a picture of it. And on my way there on morning 2, it hit me. I ain't going to make it.
I didn't know you had not vocalized this to me yet.
I had some rumblies in my tumblies, maybe 150 to 200 yards after we left my truck. And I had already shit once. And after I left Adam, I had made a right-hand turn to go down to that finger of the woods. And that's where I was like, I honestly am not sure I'm going to make it to where I want to go before I shit. I might have to shit somewhere from a point at where I'm at to where I'm going. And he's going to want to know why. But it was the first time I've had to poop so bad that like it hurt.
Mm-hmm. Were you sweating?
I was sweating. I was in pain. Mm-hmm. And I had a little hitch in my giddy up too. Like I was moving pretty quick. And I have to go set up my stand and everything. Like I have to go set my whole setup up, which is dumb. But anyway, I get to a point. There's a point when you have to go to the bathroom where your body knows you're close to going to the bathroom. Oh, yeah. And so it commits like, we're going. Yeah. We're doing this. Yeah. Whether you're ready or not, we're doing this. And so
we're in your pants.
I am now probably like 30 yards from the tree line, this finger of woods where I know this is where I'm going to drop all my shit, my stuff, and then I'm going to shit. And so I get there, I drop all my backpack off my back. I've got my lamp on. I've got my knife out. I know I'm taking my long johns off and I'm going to cut the sleeves off to wipe my ass. And so it is 9 degrees. I'm pretty sure it was 9 degrees that morning. Maybe 19.
Yeah, it was the coldest morning.
It was maybe single digits. I don't know.
It was the coldest morning of the entire
trip. Whole trip. And I am sweating completely bare-chested on the edge of this creek where I have now sawed off one arm of my poly long underwear shirt, but have to go so bad that I can't even take enough time to cut the other arm off. And so I just drape those over a tree. I one hand grab the tree, or I pull my pants all the way down to my boots. I one hand grab a tree with my left hand, and I just swing my ass out over this dry creek and just spray diarrhea into the creek. And instant relief. And I'm steaming up the morning, this beautiful Kansas morning, and I'm steaming it up. And I just diarrhea shit into a dry creek, and I use my long john shirt and wipe my ass. And so
I'm trying to find your.
I'm really sorry, everybody, if anybody's ever found that. It's not pleasant. But so that was actually morning 2, and then I realized that I can't sit in the fucking tree that I thought I had picked out, and it's downwind of the diarrhea that I just took in the creek. So that was a morning 2 was kind of rough for me. I'm not gonna lie.
You're going to have to trim this fat, but I really wanted to find the text.
That's all right.
Oh, I couldn't get him off fast enough. It was 20 degrees this morning as I was shirtless, spray shitting diarrhea into the creek, holding a tree with one hand, pushing my dick and balls back with the other so I didn't pee-pee in my pants. That's the text that came through that morning to me and Head in our group text. And I'm like, I was trying not to laugh out loud.
Well, I think everybody knows that every poo-poo time is pee-pee time, but not every pee-pee time is poo-poo time.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you poo, you got to pee, and you got to make sure that you don't piss straight down into your hunting clothes and your boots. So you push everything like a bulldog straight back. So you actually pee backwards. Everybody knows. Listen, this is disgusting, but everybody knows.
So that was
it's science, man.
No, but that was the most. So I'm visualizing.
We're Michigan's #1 hunting science-based podcast.
It's just, but this is the truth to hunting. Like, you don't just go sit in a tree and there's so much difficulty, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
It's like, where do you shit? Or maybe it's just a postal.
Our wives think that we're just out gallivanting in the wilderness, frolicking, sniffing flowers. Meanwhile, we have upset tum-tums, and we have to be freezing cold, diarrhea shitting into a creek.
And you would text me in the mornings. It would be dead silent, and we'd be texting each other like, holy shit, it's quiet, and I got bubble guts.
Big time bubble guts.
I'm like, me too. All he can hear in the morning, and I'm guessing 20 yards in every direction, all you hear is
yeah. I often wonder if it's really as loud on the ground level as it is to us. I think the same thing about my beard scratching against my head.
It's probably not.
I don't know.
And I'm thinking, I went as far as to stop. I wasn't drinking coffee at all.
At all.
I had switched to drinking cold caffeinated beverages like their Alani. They have 200 milligrams of caffeine, or First Form energy drinks that have 200 milligrams of caffeine, so that I'm not drinking a hot liquid that makes me have to shit in the morning 3 different times.
And I still was. I was having 1 cup of coffee and an energy drink on the way to this fucking stand. So that's just me. That's just my diet.
And that morning at that pinch point, I looked to my left and there was a 4-point. Like I moved my stand a couple times.
You did.
It was getting to be daylight, and I'm still fucking around with my stand because once again, here we are. There's no good trees to sit in, and I'm like, I'm just gonna sit in this cluster of 5 trees. But I'd already set my stand up, took it down, and it was only 5 feet off the ground at that point. Yeah. But I took it down and moved it over to the other side of that finger, and was setting it up, and I turned and looked, and there's a little buck staring at me in the pinch point. He's just watching me. I could have grabbed my arrow and shot at him. Like he didn't, and then he walked away. Didn't give a shit. He was a 4.
I think we said on multiple occasions, it is interesting to see deer in rural Kansas that don't see humans very often.
No, and that was the thing is at that moment, that was the moment I realized, I call it like ambush hunting.
Yeah.
These deer that I'm going to see, assuming it's all similarly pressured areas, aren't going to know anything about me or what a human is. And they are totally cool with you getting a second arrow set up in your bow, or they're totally cool with you moving around and setting a stand up on the ground and watching you and then just walking off because they don't know what the fuck is going on.
The young ones, I don't know that the mature ones really are. I mean, you had an encounter, which we're going to get to next, but again, that deer heard me break a twig and smelled me and didn't like it enough to totally fucking bailed.
Right.
So there's a difference between what was probably a 140 class buck versus a 4-point. So maybe there's a difference in age. Maybe that larger buck has had experiences before with humans. Maybe he's been shot at on multiple occasions. And so maybe that's the difference. Maybe the younger bucks, maybe they don't see people that often. Maybe the bigger bucks don't see people that often, but that bigger bucks has seen people just enough to know that at this time of year when my balls are cold, people shoot things at me.
Right.
And I don't like this, and I'm out of here. So Adam had that experience where he saw a little 4-point watching him.
Yeah, and that was all I saw that morning. And then walking in, he was bedded down in that finger that ran all the way out that I had to walk back up to the truck. And
so this theme kind of carries on today, like maybe day 4, would you say? Day 4, we had moved on from that property, not emotionally. I feel like I still felt like there was a chance that we could see deer out there, just based on the fact that there was so much sign. But we decided to finally go hunt.
It was another weehaw we had hunted the first weekend that
it is literally it's a single strip of woods, which is probably 200 yards wide, 300 yards wide, up the middle of a 200-acre field.
Beans on each side.
Beans on each side. There's a pinch point in between the woods to get from one field to the other that the farmer created. There's a dry creek bed that runs up the middle of the woods, and the woods connect on each side to other additional properties.
It runs from the middle of the south to the middle of the property, stops, pinch point, and then more woods all the way to the northernmost midpoint of the property.
And Adam had sat on one of those points in September and had watched a buck hit a scrape on the opposite point. So we knew where I was sitting, but I never saw that deer until I got up down. Long story long is we decided to go back here because we already knew there were deer here. We showed up to hunt it. There was not sign that other people were out there. So we decided to hunt it. And
it was, I would say, a less desirable area. It seemed like the first town we were in was more pressured.
This was a little bit outside of town. Yes.
So, and that was, so I walked out that night and I'm like, I'm going to go sit somewhere around where I saw that buck making the scrape, and it's near the pinch point. And you were like, I'd hunt that pinch point.
Yeah.
So I walked out there and I, did my thing where I got set up in a tree, and it was a little tree, and I didn't like it. I was uncomfortable, and the wind was blowing straight into my face. The wind was a lot to handle down there. So I ended up once again not staying there. I was on the southernmost tip of that first of the North Peninsula, watching the pinch point exit into that one field and then the scrape. I got down and I ended up sitting right in the pinch point on the other side of the other bean field. And I was like one stick high, and I had weeds kind of blocking me out, and I was just watching the pinch point. Yep. Nothing fucking happened that night.
And I had actually walked around the perimeter of this property up to the very far corner and was sitting on the ground again because there were the entire perimeter of this property and the entire perimeter of the woods was scrapes every 20 yards. And they were all fresh, and they were tore the fuck up. There were rubs all over the place. I'm like, God damn, they are hammering this property. This is awesome. And there was a couple of giant scrapes up in this corner. So I was like, I'm just going to tuck back in against the fence and be hopefully far enough away. I was like 18 yards from those scrapes. Hopefully I'm just far enough out of sight where if they come across the fence in either direction, they'll hit that scrape and I'll be able to see them coming. Whatever. I didn't see shit that night. Oh no, I did. I saw a couple of little cheese sticks behind me playing around. I had an encounter with cows.
You scared the shit out of a cow.
I scared the shit out of a cow. Like, it didn't know I was there, and it got really close to me, and then I moved, and it saw me move, and it freaked out, which was really funny to me because I've never seen like a cow get scared before. And then when it panicked, all the other cows panicked, and they all ran at the same time the hell out of there. So that was pretty funny. But I did see those two little bucks. Nothing that I thought should have been the size to make those two scrapes.
Right.
But Adam did.
Yeah, so I was at a spot where I could see that north property that was private, and I knew where you were sitting in that corner, so I could see that direction, but I would have never... There was a hump that blocked me from actually seeing where you were at, and it was quite a distance there. But I could see those cows walking your way along that fence line, and I'm like... Oh, Brett's gonna love this.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Black cow. But right before, so 4:30, I was looking down there and I could see a big buck run out of that north section of woods. There's a little island about 100 yards out into the beans that looked like it didn't have much on it.
Just looked like a pile of trash almost.
Like just a stack of shit. I saw a big buck run out from the woods, and I watched him haul ass. It looked to me like he went behind the island and then kept running your way. Mm-hmm. So I'm like...
I was so excited.
I also didn't know... Yeah. I'm like, I think there's a big buck running your way. I had no idea what it was like where you were at, how vast it actually was. Mm-hmm. So you never actually saw that buck? So anyways, the rest of my night, I didn't see anything. But as it started to get darker, I looked down. I could see all the way down that peninsula of woods. Same spot, north, looking at the island. And I could see a big body out, like eating or doing something. It looked like 2 deer all the way down there. So I get my rangefinder because that's what I use. And I'm looking down there. I'm like, that's a big fat buck down there. And he's eating in the beans. And he looks like he kind of fucks around with the other buck. And they're darker bodied. And then about 5 minutes later, that same buck I saw run out was lighter in color, he walked back up from the island direction to the woods, and he didn't really look at those other bucks. He just walked into the woods. So that was basically the all that happened that night, but it got me fired up going, oh, you know what? There's some big deer out here, and I like this property, and I'm going to start, like, Bret and I need to start hunting these bucks I see, because they're out here. So we ended up meeting back at the truck with nothing happening that night, but we had decided that we were going to chase those bucks.
These were the deer we were going to chase. Yep. And then I think the next morning we went back there again, and that was the morning that I shit in those woods, right? I'm pretty sure.
So the next morning you talked to me about we had sort of discussed that buck might be living on that island.
Yeah, again, I was thinking, man, these bucks, they'll live by themselves. The big bucks will live by themselves. They don't want to live with anybody else. And if it looks like he came from that island, and if it looks like he ran to that island, he's probably got a bed on that island.
So I had thought about walking out and finding a spot to sit in those woods and try to guesstimate where, and I'd put a pin on Onyx and where I think they're walking in. It's very difficult to tell from that distance.
Yeah, you were pretty far away.
Yeah. So you're like, have you ever considered just not walking out there until gray light so that you don't spook them or scare them or do whatever so that they know you're out there? And I'm like, no, but I'll give it a whirl. So you ended up walking and hunting a different area. You ended up walking over to the other side field and walking and hunting an area over there. And I walked
where you had seen deer crossing there in September.
Correct.
And so I wanted to just sit there because, hey, if the deer are crossing here then, maybe they're crossing here now. So and both of these fields have standing beans, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Both these standing beans.
Yep.
But they're not horrible to walk.
No, easy to walk to at this point.
But not quiet.
No.
So anyways, I ended up walking the long way around the entire field to get around and hopefully not blow out if there's a buck on that island. And I waited till gray light. But I ended up not wanting to sit there till the evening. My goal was to hunt it in the evening. Yeah. So I set up and sat in a tree not high off the ground on the other side of the field where I was thinking about hunting that morning. And I was like, you know what? Just go over there. So I got down at like 8:30 or 9, and I ended up walking all real slow around the where you sat that first morning, around the north edge, over into those woods. And I went in there, and I'm like, this is beautiful in here. And I ended up just kind of I looked for some sign, thought I found something. You could see that there's possibly some runs, and I set up, and I ended up staying there all day.
All day long.
And the night before, I had drank all my fluids that were in my backpack, so I had nothing to drink, nothing to eat.
I forgot about that.
And I was sitting there roasting in the sun during the day, and I was going, holy shit, this is kind of miserable.
I forgot we did an all-day sit that day. Or you did. I had gotten down, and I was miserable.
I think you were struggling with your eye.
Yeah, because that was like 25-mile-an-hour winds. And after my eye surgeries, like when my right eye gets wind on it, and my eyes, it doesn't tear like it's supposed to. So when it gets dry, it gets scratchy, and then it gets blurry, and then I get mad, and it messes with my depth perception. And at 25-mile-an-hour winds in your face, it was pretty bad out there.
Yeah. So I'm like, I know Bret's miserable.
I had gone back to the truck to take a nap because I just needed to close my eyes and let it heal, because your eye will heal light scratches with your own tears in a matter of a couple hours if you just close your eye.
Yeah.
So I did. I went and took a nap in the truck.
And I was like, I'm so far away. I'm at the furthest spot I could be to go to the truck and then come back out here and hunt tonight. So I'm like, fuck it. I trust the tree that I'm in. I'm going to sit here. And anyways, I sat there all day and then started to realize I was kind of miserable and nothing was happening. I didn't see a single deer all day long. Actually, I believe I saw a deer bedded down. She came in, lay down for 15 minutes and then left. But I thought I had a good spot. I thought I knew where that buck was walking in. And so I decided to get out of the tree a little bit early.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. And I think, did you have your lights?
So I had nothing, and I'm like, I don't have my headlamp.
Yeah.
I need to get out of here because I don't know where I'm at, first of all. And I got to get my stand down before it gets too dark. So I get my stand out. I got it on my back. I got my sticks down. I got one more. I'm on the ground.
And it's not shooting time yet. Like it's before shooting time.
Yeah. So I've got my feet on the ground at this point, and my
So We're back from our bathroom break.
I had to pee so bad.
I never even paused this. Everyone's going to get to hear what that turned into a poop. But so we left it off at you have now.
My feet are on the ground.
You've sat all day.
Yeah.
You've had enough. You don't have a headlamp. You don't have any beverages. You're literally turning into a California raisin. So you descend from the tree and you are now on the ground.
These are where this is the moment where the learnings, the education for Adam starts. And where it is all good for me because I have made a ton of the way that I hunt now is totally different from this moment because of the things I learned about myself. First of all, it's very important at this moment that you stay hydrated, have something to drink, and have something to stay nourished so you don't make stupid decisions. Okay? I went out there that morning when I could see, so I didn't use my headlamp, and I didn't take it with me. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So that night,
that's right.
made the decision to get down early so that I could see, knowing I didn't have my headlamp.
Thinking you didn't have your headlamp.
Long story long, I actually did.
Yeah,
and not only did I have my headlamp, I had a backup headlamp.
Oh, my God.
So I had thought I left it in the truck because I didn't need it in the morning. So I decided to get down, and I've got 2 feet on the ground. I still have my safety harness, or whatever you call
your tether.
My tether around the tree.
Your lineman's belt.
My lineman's belt, which is also my safety harness, which is everything. But anyways, I'm getting my last stick off, and I look to my right, which is where I was watching, and the giant buck had made its way. I watched him walk into the woods. And he didn't see me at all. And I'm standing there, and I'm thinking to myself, you fucking idiot. This is exactly what you get.
Yeah. I think everybody would have thought that. So don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah. What do you do? What do you do now?
Exactly what you did.
I unclip my bow and my... What did I lower down together? My bow and my backpack, I lowered down together on my
your bow rope.
My cord. And it's laying on the ground, 5 yards in front of me where I dropped it. So I unclip. I still have my stand on my back, my mobile stand. And I run over and I bend over and I get my bow unclipped.
And the deer still doesn't see you.
No, so the deer is walking down this run that I saw in there, and it just wasn't like super torn up.
Sure.
But it was almost like a divot where there used to be a little bit of water in there, like a small creek. And I don't know if it was just drainage or whatever that ran to the field. He's walking that direction. He was at that point, I couldn't have shot him from my tree. It would have been a far shot. I think it would have been about 50 yards.
Yeah.
So I could have shot, but not ideal. So that ultimately doesn't matter. But I get my bow. I've got my stand on my back, and the leaves are crispy as fuck.
Yeah.
I know it was warm that morning, but it was still loud.
Everything was dry. Yeah.
The wind had died down at night, so you could hear every step I take. So I'm like, every step. So he's walking on this angle down this little drainage.
That really stings, doesn't it?
It does. Oh, my God. All I can see is him right now.
Yeah.
I know that this buck can hear my footsteps, but doesn't know what the hell is going on. And I get to a point where I can see him, and he is sort of looking around like, what's going on over there? And there's so many trees in this area that you can kind of like duck and weave and take a couple steps. And I get to the point where, what do I do? What do I even do to get him over? I've got to try and get him back over here. So I got my grunt, and I'm standing by a tree. I loaded an arrow, and it's very touchy. So it was a strobe lighted nocturnal knock, and it was fucking going off.
Yeah.
So not only am I standing there with my stand on my back, I've got an arrow knock that's flashing strobe light, and a giant buck, probably the biggest buck I've ever had a close encounter with, looking for me. But I am getting his attention, and he's interested in what I am.
Because you're grunting, right?
So now at this point, I'm grunting, and I'm kicking the ground, and I'm rubbing my elbow on a tree.
Smart.
So it sounds like I'm a buck that's ready to fight, is what I'm thinking. I have no idea if it's working, but all of a sudden, I lose him behind some trees, but I can hear footsteps coming at me, and I'm like, there's another buck in here? But it was him.
Yeah.
He turned and started walking towards me, and then I looked, and it's him. So I start doing the same thing.
How close?
I had him in my head at 40 yards.
Okay.
Because he walked out and we were face to face, and I was holding my bow, covering the knock with my glove, my hand, and I decided, okay, this is it. You draw back and see what happens, and if you think you can get a shot off. So I marked him at 40 yards, and that was my mistake. I was wrong. I pulled back, and he's staring at me, and I'm like, just shoot at his fucking heart. Like you have a slight angle. He's straight onto you, but you have a slight angle. Fuck it, shoot. So he's just staring at me, so I fucking shoot, and it's there's branches and shit, and it's getting dark, and all I know is I hear my arrow smack something. Yeah, and it kind of sounds like it could have been a deer.
Sure, positive. You're thinking positive.
I don't see my knock. And he bounced off like away from me a little bit. Yeah, but didn't run away. I knew he was still standing over to my right, and I'm like, did I hit him? Like, what's going on?
Meanwhile, I'm down in my saddle, recently recovered from dry eye syndrome. I'm watching the Amish go back and forth in their horse and buggy on the fucking dirt road. Clickety clackety, clickety clackety, clickety clackety, clickety clackety. Dogs in the background going, not my dog, the fucking neighbor's dogs. Haven't seen any fucking deer. And meanwhile, Adam's down having a face to face with a fucking polar bear.
Yeah, that's what
he did refer to him as a polar bear.
So anyways, he eventually, I kept trying to get him to fight me.
Yeah, which is fascinating to me that was what you chose to do, is fight this thing.
He ended up blowing and just running away. I don't think he truly knew what was going on.
I don't think so either. Based on what happens next.
Even if he saw me, he did not know that I was hunting him.
Right. So Kansas. So Adam has released 3 arrows in Kansas thus far.
I've had to clean 2 broadheads off, the mud off 2 broadheads. And what I go over and I'm trying to find, like, where'd my arrow go? Yeah. Because he was fine. It's sticking into a tree, and I must have shot directly over his back. Yeah. So he was probably only 25 yards, and I shot 40. In that moment, they seem way further away.
Yeah, I know.
So, and I realized that my knocks are flying off. So when my arrow shoots, it's fine. But when it hits something, the knock is popping off.
Yeah, that ain't good, man.
So my arrow's in a tree, and my knock is blinking on the ground. So anyways, I get my arrow out, lose the broadhead sunk in the tree, and then I grab my knock, and I'm like all fucking riled up.
Yeah, you are.
Pissed off at myself, but also like, holy shit, that almost happened.
Yeah.
Like, you're a horrible hunter, but holy shit,
that was awesome.
You almost got in a fight with a buck because you were doing weird shit.
Yeah.
And I walk to the truck, and I have to. You're still in your tree.
I'm way back by the truck. Like, I hunted in the woods, really close to the road again, because I
seen a buck in there before.
Yeah, we had seen a buck in there. There's fucking scrapes every 20 yards up and down the woods, all over the place. So I'm like, I think they're just in here, working through here. I just need to be in the right place at the right time. And so I picked a spot where I could get in my saddle, and I had shooting lanes, whatever, just seeing what could happen.
So I walked in the beans that night. What I would do is walk about 15, 20 lanes out and walk down instead of walking so close to the wood line to not spook a bunch of deer. But ended up seeing some in the kind of darkish night coming on. Go into the woods. I knew you were in there. And I believe you ended up having a buck walk it.
I think so. I think I got down 5 minutes early because it was dark. And I knew that even if a deer came in front of me, I wasn't going to be able to see it because it was so dark in the woods already. So I had already lowered my bow to the ground and had taken my backpack. I think I had already put everything in my backpack, and I had slung it over my back. And I heard what I had just declared as the most beautiful sound in the woods on my last podcast, that long step toe dragging buck walk through the dry leaves, where it's like, that's a buck. And it's walking. So anyway, it was behind me far enough that I never saw it, but it worked its way from the beans across the woods somewhere behind me. So like I was close. There were bucks out there that night. I never put my eyes on it, but it was, had I been, had I been 50 yards behind me, I probably could have seen what that was.
But I'm already out in the field.
Adam's already on his way back to the truck.
Not far from that area. So it's, who knows?
Yeah. So anyway, Adam had an encounter with a buck. I had heard a buck walking behind me. Who knows how big it was? It could have been a fucking 4-point for all I know. But anyway, we get back to the truck, and swap stories, and Adam is pumped up.
Pumped and pissed.
Pumped and pissed. That's going to be the name of this episode. Pumped and pissed.
But we had decided we're going to come right back in the morning.
Yeah, like, hey, this is where we're hunting. Like, this spot is hot. Let's just figure this one out. But I think, was it the morning? No, that was the afternoon that we decided to do that. Are you sure we didn't hunt somewhere else?
I think. Oh yeah, because we ended up.
You dropped me off
at that new property.
At the new property. So I said, I want to hunt somewhere totally different in this morning. Just drop me off and then come get me in the afternoon. Come get me when the morning hunt's over. So Adam drops me off in the middle of nowhere to a property I've never been to before. And I walk all the way out there and get set up. I walk way the hell around, find myself a spot to sit, and somebody else walks out like 10, 20 minutes before shooting time.
Like a 500-acre parcel.
It is a giant parcel of woods, and this dude walks all the way to me.
To you.
To me. And I'm like flashing lights, and you can see he turns around and leaves. But
you said he kind of looked like with his light that he did like a
giant eye roll. Like,
holy shit, are you kidding me?
And you know what? I'm not even mad about that. That guy would have he had no idea that I was there because there was no vehicle.
You seemed like you just felt bad.
I did. I felt bad because I know how long of a walk that was and where he had to walk from. And he walked a long way to get there. Anyway, long story long is someone walked in on me. I never saw any deer where I was at, but I did see a buck locked down on a doe out in the middle of the bean field. Like he had run off her fawns, I imagine, is who I saw take off. And he had her pinned down. He wasn't getting away from him out in the middle of that bean field. And I saw a coyote running him around out there.
Coyotes were running him around.
There was a coyote, but I think there was also some fawns. And he chased them all off, and he stayed right on her. So I got down and tried to ground stalk over around them, bumped a couple of, I think those fawns, I bumped them out of their bed, and then that buck and the doe ran into the neighbor's property, and then I didn't see anything. So, but then
we realized that morning, you're like, I'm going to be like 10, 15 minutes away from you, just if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's fine. And I got in the truck. I'm like, by the way, you're 30 minutes.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a drive.
So I dropped him off, and I decided to drive all the way back over to where I saw the first buck and hunt that
by
morning,
the river. Yep.
By the river. And that's when I got out that morning. I saw the same deer I saw the young boys chasing the girls. And I got up, and I wanted to mosey back and see what was back there. And I saw like what looked like a blind up, like you could see it was tall. And I walked back there through this little weird tree area where I kept seeing all the deer going. But it wasn't a blind. It was like a water pump station at the back of the wildlife preserve. And it went the back, and it was an open lot, like a lot where you could park cars. And it dropped straight down the river. Like, I mean, it's like a cliff.
Yeah.
And then this massive river. And there were deer back there when I walked back there. There was a deer that ran right through that lot. And I'm looking down there, and I can see deer standing down at the river. And I'm like, this is where they must be walking right up to me from right there. And then I turn around, these two dudes are walking at me. And I'm like, how's this going to go? They're not hunting.
Yeah.
But it's two local guys, a little bit older. And I have a conversation with them. And they were cool to talk to. But they knew I was hunting back there, and I think it's odd that they still walked back there. Like,
yeah.
My whole thing is like, because he said to me, he made the comment, "Oh, are you the black truck on the street?" And I'm like, yeah. So why would you decide to walk back there?
Doing it
the
like
very front of the property all the way to the back. He's like, well, we just wanted to see where the pump was at, where it was running right now. And I'm like, man, I was just hunting right down over here.
Yeah.
Why'd you do, like, in my mind when I left there, I'm like, I wonder why they did that.
Yeah.
When people are hunting.
Maybe that's why they did that.
He's like, I might have spooked those deer.
Yeah.
So anyways, but they were nice. And he owned a lodge. He's like, you guys should come to my lodge next year. It's set up for hunters. And I'm like, whatever. But then I left to go pick you up. You were sitting there. Almost left your bow.
Yeah, I did almost forget my bow. I loaded everything up and almost forgot my bow.
And we decided we were going to go check out another property.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
So we drove kind of a weird out to the middle of nowhere again.
It was like an hour drive.
It was a new Weehaw.
But word to the wise, check the Weehaw dates before you drive to a parcel, because shame on Onyx. Like, when the Weehaw is expired, make it go away. Don't let it entice me. It was a spring only Weehaw, and we parked and went out there, and the owner came out there. And thank God he was cool because he could have really given us a hard time. Well, we got out there.
We walked all the way down the trail
Yeah.
to the back. We were not hunting. We were in our middle of the day gear. We were out of our hunting clothes.
City boy clothes.
And we get to the back, and I'm like, there's a corn feeder.
Yeah, I was like, that's a little weird on this weehaw.
10 yards away from a giant blind.
Uh-huh. Which had a trail camera on it.
And we walk over there and look at it, and there's a camera. I'm like, we're on camera right now.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is bizarre.
This is not good.
You're like, it says it's public.
Yeah.
Then there's a sign for Weehaw, but we never looked at the date.
Nope.
And then all of a sudden, there's a truck driving back. We're like, oh, here we go.
Nice brand new heavy duty Silverado or something.
It was
And the guy rolls up, and I walk out to talk to him because we didn't have any male intent. And he's like, what are you guys doing out here? I was like, oh, is this not public? And he goes, only in the spring. I'm like, oh my God, I never even thought to look at the dates. He goes, you ain't the first one.
Yeah.
I was like, well, get out of here, man. He goes, you want a ride? He gave us a ride to the front gate.
Which I figured there must have been a camera up there we didn't see because he got there too quick to be
really quick
back camera. But he was like, yeah, this property produces some biggins.
He referred to them as biggins. It grows some biggins, he said.
But his dad called. And you could tell that his dad was concerned about us being out there. And he's like, my dad's the hothead, so I'm glad I got out here before.
Yeah. We might have been dead in Kansas at some point had that not.
We were getting in his truck, and I was thinking to myself, should we get in this guy's fucking truck?
And I had already done the math equation in my head, like, this guy was cool. He didn't flip out on us. He's got a really nice truck. He probably isn't going to shoot us and bury us on this property.
But it still crossed my mind.
Yeah. If it would have been like a beater, I might have questioned it. Like, nah, man, we're good. We'll walk. But he got us out of there, and we went on our merry way.
Dropped us off at our truck, and then we were like, okay.
And so our decision at this point is we are going to tag team hunt this buck in the same spot. Because if he slips at him, then I'll be set up on the other side if he goes wide, and then I'll shoot him.
I was like, I'm going to go to the same area, and I'm going to pick a different tree.
Yep.
Play this wind. And watch where he's walking. I know right where he's walking now.
Yeah, and I got set up 70 yards to the southeast of Adam.
He's going to run right into you.
Yep.
Because there's a water hole back there, and our belief was that he's coming in, marking his territory, and walking maybe to that water hole.
And we both walked in the same side of the property, but you went into the woods, sort of in a straight line to where you were going to set up, and I went a little further down, and I walked a straight line into where I was going to set up. And on my way in, I saw some giant rubs again. I'm like, holy shit, these deer are just tearing this spot up. Like, these bucks are in here a lot.
But it was a weird spot to where I didn't see much during the day at all.
No, not at all.
Nothing. Like in the morning and during the day, there was like, it was boring as fuck.
Yep. All evening activity. And so we made our way over. Adam got set up, and I was set up 70 yards of him, and we just waited. And I think this is where I got poison oak, or whatever the vine is, whatever the hairy vine is. Poison oak? This is where I got it, and then it transferred to my pee-pee after this, because I got poison oak when we were there. And the only thing I can think of is that I touched it when I was climbing the tree, and when I flopped it out to go pee, which it doesn't really flop, it pokes. When I took it out to go pee, I touched it with my hands again, and I got some on my ween.
So the thing is, I thought it transferred through bloodstream, not touch, which
no, it's the oil on it.
Maybe his blood's really flowing to his dingle.
It's the oil.
Little Timmy.
So anyway, we hunted that night, and I didn't see anything.
And I knew I was sitting there waiting until 10 minutes before last light. That was the moment. And I saw nothing until...
And this is the very next night. So Adam had just had a face-to-face encounter with a polar bear, and we are back in the same spot.
Shot my third arrow.
Adam had shot an arrow at this deer, and we're going to push it. We're going to hunt the same deer.
Yep. So I'm sitting there, and sure as shit, and I'm facing the spot he walks in the beans, straight out from the island,
right?
Watching that trail he walks down. And the wind is in the same position.
Yeah, we had south wind all the rest of the week.
So all of a sudden, sure as shit, it's starting to get dark, and I hear footsteps behind me.
The other direction.
And it's a slow walk, just like you described. And I'm like, there is a deer, large deer, moving my direction behind me and to the north. And in my mind, I'm like, this motherfucker is walking in the trail I walked in, and he's coming in here to catch my wind the opposite direction.
Which is exactly what he was doing.
So this is where I started to realize some of the mistakes I make, because I could have shot this deer. He would have been 20 yards, 25 yards away. I would have had an open shot. I sat there and listened
Mm-hmm.
and listened. And I had no shots. So directly to my right, I was very limited. That's not where I want to shoot. It's my off shot. Like I would have had to turn around. And then I had a little thorn tree that was kind of all the way up, blocking me a little bit. Well, that's where it sounds like that's where he's going to walk in. So anyways, I sat there and I listened. And then all of a sudden I see him and I'm like, this is my boy. And it's getting to be darker, and I watch him walk in, and he's looking in there. He's very studying the area.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally he's directly to my right, directly to my north. My wind's blowing right at him. He doesn't see me, but he starts to turn north and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
So at that moment, when he's butt to me, walking straight away, I can get up and move. And then he gets about 10 yards and he turns and looks because he hears me. And I'm at this point drawn, bent to my right through this little thorn tree. And I'm like, here's another shitty shot I got. He's probably, I assume 40 yards away.
And he was what, 35?
I think he was only 25 at that point. 30, you said, maybe.
Yeah.
So I rip a shot at him. I can hardly see him through my peep in my sight, but I'm like, fuck, I'm right on his body. Don't know if there's branches in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the only opening I was going to get to shoot this buck. And so I fire a shot. Once again, no knock. He runs completely back the opposite direction, east. And I don't hear anything. It's almost like he ran 15 yards and then stopped. I didn't hear a single thing. And I'm like, this isn't good. I feel shitty. I don't feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see my arrow anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so you and I are texting. I'm like, what do we do? What do we do? You're like, well, just wait a little bit. Get out of your stand. Leave everything. Get out of your stand and go see what you can see. And I'm like, man, I'm like lost.
Yeah.
I can't. It was dark.
With no lighted knock.
No.
It's needle in a fucking haystack.
I'm like, I can't find a single thing. I don't see blood. I don't know if I'm on the right spot. I'm trying to look back at my tree. And you're tired and you're like, what do we fucking do? So you and I go back and I get my stand down and I walk in and we have a discussion where you're like, what I think we should do, go home, come back in the morning and we'll hunt in the morning and then we'll get down after our morning hunt and go see if we can find your arrow and see what we're looking at. And that gives him time to die if you hit him. Yeah.
It's like I said, best case scenario, you hit him and he's laying dead and we get him in the morning. Worst case scenario is you missed him. And we can at least find your arrow and figure out whether there's blood on it or not. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we did. We decided to do that.
I go in there and I go right to where I shot at him. And I knew it was that area. I just, you're never 100% sure. Couldn't find my arrow. You get out and you come back in there and you ended up finding my arrow. Once again, it was just, I missed. I
misjudged distance, yeah.
And bad shot. I knew it was a bad shot, but I wanted to take it anyways. Mm-hmm. And I realized the learning point for me here was the moment I heard footsteps back behind me, I should have gotten up and already turned to my right because when he was standing 20 yards broadside, I could have ripped a shot easy.
Yeah, right.
And been ready to go. But instead, I sat there and fucking waited till I saw him and I couldn't move.
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know what it's just one of those things you don't think about till you learn the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've shot 4 fucking arrows at bucks and have nothing to show for it. But at least we found my arrow and and didn't lose another broadhead and went home and did you see bucks that night?
No, so that was the morning. Right? So that was the morning.
That was night.
That was night. Oh, yeah. I didn't see anything that night. No, I didn't see anything. But the next morning, we went and hunted and then went tracking, right? So where did I sit that morning? I don't really remember.
You sat around the water hole.
Oh, yeah. So I went in to figure out. There was a water hole on the map. But in September, I'm pretty sure it was dry. But I went and checked it this time, and there was water in it. So I set up around it in the morning and ended up having a buck come in. I'm guessing he was investigating my rattles and my grunts, and he was probably as big as that deer right there. He's probably 115, 120 inch buck. He was going to get it because he was a handsome guy.
And we only had a day and a half left.
We only had a day left. I mean, he was going to get it. He was a good buck. But he went and checked the way he was moving through that creek. He was very strategic in where he was going, what he was standing behind while he was investigating these sounds. And he never gave me a shot opportunity. Mm-hmm. And he hung out for a while, I think, in that area, trying to figure out where these grunts and these rattles were coming from. And then he took off. And so we went and tracked. And I said, you know what? I like this spot. There's water. I think the deer are moving through here. It looks like there's bedding over here. I'm just going to leave my setup and I'll hunt here again tonight. Mm-hmm. And then we went and found your arrow and we decided I'm going to hunt there again tonight in the same exact spot, in the same exact tree. No, I moved trees.
Yeah, I moved trees. Take your shit down.
I moved trees because what I realized was that deer couldn't come to me because a tree had fallen in the creek. And so he couldn't keep coming down the creek. He had to go around it, and that's what put him out of range to me. So I actually moved about 20 yards down the creek before the fallen tree so that should they move through there was also some standing water in the creek, which I think they were hitting to get drinks because there was tracks all over it.
Hear them.
I could hear them drinking from it. And so I did. You're right. I moved my setup for the evening, went and found your arrow. You were going to hunt there again. You were going to hunt the same exact spot again.
Yeah, I was like, I'm going to move. Now that I know that he's possibly coming in from two different directions, ultimately what I believe happened was I had a totally different buck. That was a totally different buck come in that next night.
Yep.
And he was following my tracks in to see what was going on.
Yeah, so Adam describes this buck to me initially as wide with really tall tines. That's his first explanation of this buck.
Yeah.
And then after his encounter with him, he's like, yeah, he was real high and tight. And I'm like, high and tight? That's not what you explained to me.
Yeah, a little more like that one.
Yeah, and I was like, that's not the same thing. He goes, it had to be the same deer. And then we realized it's not. It's two different bucks out there.
Yeah. So I moved my stand to a spot that was closer to the first one, and watching the spot from the field again, and I'm like, this is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I'm high up, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And I basically just sat there that evening and waited once again until 10 minutes before shooting time.
And same with me. 10, maybe 20 minutes before shooting light, I hear that same long step, toe dragging, stiff-legged big buck walking through the rustly leaves. But he's south of me, working from the beans to my left, down towards the creek. And I'm like, perfect. He's going to do the same exact thing. I can hear him dragging his toes. I never see him, but I can hear him moving from left to right in front of me, works down into the creek, gets a drink, coughs, the typical, like they're drinking too fast that they get choked up and they cough. And he stays there the whole time. I grunt. He never comes to me. He moves. He's walking around over there. He's over in the area where there's a bunch of rubs on these cedar trees. And I'm pretty sure he's just over there marking his territory, but doesn't want to come necessarily figure out what the grunts are, whatever. But he just hangs out there until dark. And then I have to get down. So anyway, the morning I see a buck, the evening I have a buck close to me. And I'm like, man, this is the spot. I'm going to stay right here again. I decide to leave my setup for the very last morning. And then Adam has another wonderful experience.
So it's the same. It's the exact same buck from the first night.
And I think Adam's theory was, is it possible that the deer will do this 3 nights in a row?
Yeah, and that was me still thinking that it was
the same one. Yeah.
But the way that he worked in that night was exactly where I thought. 30 yards in front of me. He walked right from that island, 100 yards through the beans. And this is what I've deduced. He walks, so right through when you get out of the beans, before you walk into the woods, there is a thin, and I will say thin layer of head-high weeds. But they're super easy to walk through.
Yeah.
And there's larger areas between them to where he could walk through. Like when I go in and out of the woods, I can walk right through them with all my shit on, and it's not a problem. It's a very thin layer of tall weeds. And then you enter a tree line there's not a lot of trees to sit in right there, but it's like the entrance to the woods, and I called it like a foyer to a house.
It's a soft edge.
It's a soft edge, and some people would say, I guess, maybe a staging area. But for me, the example I like, what I learned from him is that I believe he walks in and he gets through those weeds, and it's all of a sudden he's entering the woods. He stopped, and I saw him walk in and stop, and it's like his front door, and there's a pile of shit down right there between him and me, so I can see the top of his back, and his head and his antlers. And I'm like, this is my guy walking right in where I want him to.
Mm-hmm.
The next, with right in front of him, there's a tree. And then he's in an opening that I had marked to shoot. That's 30 yards in front of me. And he walks in, and he stops in his foyer to take his shoes off. This is kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah.
What he does is he looks around to feel out the area before he walks into it.
Mm-hmm.
He walks in, and I already have my bow in my hand, and all I've got to do is pull it up and pull it back.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I make that little tiny movement, he turns his head and looks right at me.
Yeah.
Right at me. So he looks at me, and I'm frozen.
Yeah.
And in a split second, he just runs away.
Yep.
He literally jumps over the shit and runs away. South.
Yeah.
Not into the woods. He just runs the safe place, same place he ran the last time. I never see him again. Our last night there, and I thought to myself, he was not the same deer as the night before. He skipped a night, stayed on his island.
Yep.
Now he's coming in with a weird experience from 2 nights ago, and he's on edge.
For sure.
And I'm talking to myself now. I'm like, well, why? Of course he looks at you. You are a 240-pound gorilla hanging from a, 7-inch tree.
Yeah.
In diameter.
Yeah.
So you look fucking like you stick out.
Yeah.
I don't care how high you are. A mature deer, you're not an expert hunter. This is where I'm saying you are a beginner.
Yeah.
You are not good enough yet, but you are learning. And I possibly would have had better luck just being on the ground.
Yeah.
I think I'm very well hidden on the ground in there. That's just how Kansas was to me.
I think you are more hidden on the ground there than, like you said, 240 up in a 7-inch tree. I agree with that 100%.
And there just wasn't the trees that to get in that were big. Not like the first
Not
one
at
I
all.
sat in the first or second night.
Yeah.
First night. So
Uncle Adam needs a 200-year oak tree.
yeah, that's for damn.
I think we both do, but honestly, they're
need
just
the
they don't
size,
exist
like
there.
the age tree that I weigh.
They don't exist there.
No.
Yeah.
And you might find one, but it's all sorts of nasty.
Yep.
So
And it's not where you want to be.
once again, I didn't get a shot off, and I'm kind of thankful that was my. I still relive those moments. Like, what could I have done different? That one, I have no idea. I hardly moved. My scent was blowing in the right direction. He just looked right at me, and instead of giving me a shot, he leapt and jumped off and ran. So it was just meant to be that way. And I just learned so much about like how I'm very proud of our, I would say, our e-scouting.
Oh, I think what we did was fantastic.
I think every spot we put a pin ended up being a hot spot.
Dude, I don't think I saw deer from a stand in my first year in Kansas until the last day and a half or 2 days. Like I knew I was in the right spot, but not in the right spot enough. And I think what we did this year was we put ourselves on deer every single day. We saw deer every single hunt.
Yep.
And mostly bucks.
And it was pre-rut, so it wasn't like they were just running around. We were able to find the bucks.
We even found a couple of does that were like the first does. Like I said, I had a buck locked on a doe in the middle of a bean field. I had that little 4-point, nose in a doe. Like he was probably like, oh, she smells like that puss smells like it's getting close. Yeah. But we were on deer every single hunt, except for when I saw the dogs.
Yep.
But my last morning was coyote crazy. So Adam set up on the ground.
I went back in the same spot for just shits and giggles.
Decided to set up on the ground below the mound.
At this point, I was in peak, like
upper respiratory infection.
Upper respiratory. And I decided to sit a foot off. I wasn't even a foot off. The base, I set my stand up.
Yeah.
The base of it was basically touching the ground.
Right. And I was in my same spot where I had seen the buck the morning before. I heard the buck that same night. And I was thinking, surely they're moving through here. Like I'm by the only water. I think I could hear deer that morning. But for the most part, the coyotes ran the show that day.
Yeah, there were about 4 or 5 coyotes. And I'm sitting there. My idea was I didn't want to sit on the ground where the spiders were.
Yeah.
But I wanted to sit low enough to where I was like weeds.
Yeah. Yep.
Not not too high.
I think that's the right choice. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm like, if he walks in here, I'm going to be fine. I'll catch him. but I wasn't expecting much.
Yeah.
And then the coyotes were on a crazy hunt
They
that
went
morning.
nuts.
To the point where they were 20 yards away from me in all directions. And I watched them all run that line, and I'm like, if anything was to happen, I'm on the ground.
I would have been able to hear your screams.
I was between two little trees, they were like a V.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I wonder if I could put a foot on each one and kind of shimmy up my fat ass up this tree.
And that is way funnier if you know Adam. Like, if you've ever seen Adam and you know Adam, he's light on his feet, but he ain't shimmy up a tree like an islander.
I was just like, that's my only shot. If these fuckers come over here and think they're gonna hunt Fat Daddy because they're that hungry, then I am shimmying up here.
Yeah.
I don't know how it's gonna work, but I'm gonna fucking do it. Yeah. I'm gonna be the bear that climbs the tree.
Yeah.
With no sharp nails.
That's right.
But you had texted me that morning, and it was such an exhausting
I forgot about
week,
this.
and you had texted me, said, "Do you want to try and do this one more night, or you want to hit the road?" I'm like, man, I don't even.
So we totally forgot this. This is Sunday morning. So Saturday night into Sunday morning, the time changed.
Oh yeah.
So we gained an hour of sleep, but very excitedly, we gained an hour of sleep, but we didn't take that into consideration when adjusting our wake up times.
We still woke up we're like, oh man, we get another hour of sleep.
But we didn't think of, we got to wake up an hour
Kept our
earlier.
alarm the same.
Yeah. And so we woke up late, and I didn't even realize that until we were halfway to the tree. I'm like, wait a minute. Why?
We were driving.
We were driving halfway to our spot, and I'm like, why is something's not adding up? I'm like, oh my God, we didn't get up earlier today.
Dude, we're an hour late.
So we were an hour late. I was hauling ass as soon as we left the Airbnb in the foggy morning, and my GPS didn't keep up, and I blew through a fucking dead end and had the brakes locked up, sliding 45 miles an hour down a dirt road towards a fucking cattle gate. And I'm like, oh, motherfuck. This is not good.
This little tree, I'm going, we're going to hit the tree before we hit the gate.
Thank God we did.
Shit.
Because I hit the fucking tree, and like a 4-inch diameter tree, and it stopped me before I did not hit that cattle gate.
I watched the tree was on my corner, just bend over. And we stopped before, inches before the gate.
Yep.
And then didn't do a single thing to your car.
It did a little bit, but nothing worse than I've already done to that truck.
Shit, your car was not
stopping. It was not stopping at all.
Holy shit. Good thing it wasn't. I kept thinking, good thing it wasn't like a cliff.
Yeah.
Down into a river.
Yeah. This podcast would be totally different if that was the case. So anyway, it was kind of a rough morning.
And then we were 10 minutes later, we're driving, and Brett goes, "Holy shit, we're an hour late.
Yeah,
the sun's gonna be up."
Yeah. And so I don't think I was in my tree stand until it was shooting time that morning.
Yeah, it was getting light by the time I sat down.
Yep.
Which ultimately, I mean, who knows?
Adam was burnt. We were exhausted. Adam was burnt out, not feeling well. Again, I would have hunted that night, but we decided to just take off early. And
I had accidentally had to cough. I couldn't hold it in. It was like I'm sure everybody's experienced this, but I choked because I had so much sinus drainage. And you texted me. And you go, did you just cough?
Yeah, I could hear Adam cough in the woods.
Jesus. And then you like 30 minutes later, you go, I just coughed, so I guess we're done.
I'm done.
Like, we're done. So we walked in. But let's not forget about you shit in the woods a second time there.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
And then one between hunts, we went to a party store, and one day we got Subway at Walmart.
That's right.
And drove there. And we were driving there, and I'm like, yeah, I can't hold this. And there's nowhere to go.
There's nowhere else to go.
So we pulled in to eat our subs at that Weehaw, and you're like, why don't you just walk down the line and find a tree and take a shit? And I'm like...
I'm a pro at this point. I've already gone twice. I'm like, this is an old hat,
At least
man.
you can take the toilet paper with you. So I grabbed the toilet paper roll. You stayed in the truck and ate, and I walked right down the road, the tree line on the road. There was no traffic.
Yeah.
Maybe an Amish person on a horse and buggy, but I... happened to pass.
If anybody understands pooping in the woods, it's an Amishman.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
And you really would have had to have been looking, but this is one of my favorite parts of the whole experience. I'm going down and I'm walking. I'm like, okay, I'll poop against one of these trees. Which one's going to be right? But there happens to be this pile that's been there for probably a couple of years of like stones, and they're like the flat rock. And I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I've got a tree right here. and there's a perfect little spot to sit, and I'm going to build a fucking toilet because I'm not comfortable pooping in the woods. So I get about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these field stones or flat rocks, and I bring them over and I stack them up, and then the tree trunk, big old tree trunk, is the back, and then I take my boot and I dig out a hole in the middle.
Yeah.
And then I set my toilet paper down. I sat on the flat rocks and I shit sitting right there, like on a toilet, makeshift toilet. And then I left. I don't know what to do with my toilet paper. I think it's biodegradable.
It's biodegradable.
But I took another stone and I plugged the hole and fucking.
It's more biodegradable than my long underwear shirt that I left in the creek.
Yeah. So 3 shits in the woods, no deer, lots of travel.
But a lot of learning.
A lot of learning. I think the biggest thing for me, and that you and I discussed this, was to just. There was a lot of moments where I should have just taken a breath. I should have just stopped what I was doing and not. Like you said, the last time he walked in and I said he stood there and stared at me. What if I would have just let him walk in before I moved?
Yeah,
and let him get to a point where he can't
away
look
from
at
you.
me.
Yeah,
and he's quartering away or walking broadside away from me.
That's an excited hunter. Anybody could do that. People do that all the time. Yeah, you get so excited. You're like, well, this is my moment. I have to do this now.
So like you said when you were talking about your Illinois podcast, you're like, you let him go instead of firing at the first shot, like at the first moment firing.
Right.
Because that's my problem is as soon as I see him, boom, I'm like.
Kill mode.
Hunt, I got to fucking turn, pull back, be ready to fire right away.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you're right. I should let them get to a spot that makes sense.
So a flip of a coin here, you could have been drawn back and waiting for him to step out and killed him the second he got into the opening, or you could have let him get beyond you to where then you're not in his peripheral vision. Then you draw back and you take a quartering away shot. So you're either already drawn the second you hear a noise and you see antler and he's not standing right next to you. So you're already back and anchored. And then he steps out and you drill him, or he gets past you and you draw back and you take you mamp him and you take a quartering away shot.
Yeah.
But again, it's all, you're figuring it out, man.
I'm figuring it out.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I was able to track this buck down and was hunting a big mature deer and found him within a couple days and could have killed him. I just should have let him, instead of moving my body when he was almost facing me, I should have let him enter in the woods and he would have been walking off to the side.
Right.
And I should have already, at this point in my career as a hunter now, I'm going to start picking a lane, not multiple lanes. I'm going to pick lanes that best suit being able to draw back on a deer when they're walking in a distance. I know they're going to, in a way that I know they're going to walk.
Sure. Yeah.
So, because I could have shot at him 5 minutes later when he was over here.
Yeah,
probably been fine. But
like I said earlier, when I shoulder shot that deer in Illinois, I was in such a hurry. He wasn't going anywhere. He was taking his sweet time. I could have waited 30 seconds, and he would have presented me with the absolute perfect shot. But I was in a hurry. He wasn't. He didn't know I was there.
Right.
This deer probably would not have known you were there had you not moved. But hey, man, everybody does it. We're just, you get excited and you're like, this is my moment. I'm going to capture it. But again, you learn.
Yep.
You have other options.
Yeah. It was that. It was when something's in my offside, like if they're coming in from a different direction, prepare yourself.
In advance.
Don't wait too long.
Yes.
Prepare yourself for that direction and then let them come to you and be ready to go instead of not being prepared.
Sure. Yeah.
So just a whole lot of I think it was just being slow and steady was the answer to a lot of different questions, a lot of different things that led to failure.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know I can find the deer.
Sure.
In places I don't know. I can find the bucks. I just need to figure out how to kill them without question.
Yeah. Well, that's the $1 million question.
To get better every year now.
You keep putting yourself in these positions, and it's a law of averages. I mean, you can only be in this position so many times and learn so much before it actually happens. And so, if you keep working hard and you keep doing the extra effort that a lot of people don't want to do, you keep putting yourself in these positions to have these great experiences and encounters. It will happen. It has to. Has to.
Yep.
So, are we going to do it next year?
I don't know if
we haven't had the conversation yet.
We talked about not doing Kansas, doing other states that aren't as far.
Listen, I love going to Kansas. I'll probably still buy points. I'll probably still buy a preference point. I'll buy a preference point in Iowa just because if it ever comes up, I'll at least know that I'm prepared to apply. I don't know that we'll do Kansas. I think we're going to do Illinois.
It would be a lot easier for me to do Kansas again if I knew that the WEHAs were going to be the same.
And that's just it, man. I mean, we can wait, but you don't know. I mean, you have to, when you apply in the unit you want to go to and just hope that the WEHAs are good.
Yeah. Because like I said, my only issue with Kansas right now is I just thought about this in the shower the other day. I'd love to jump in my truck and go down there and have another couple sits just for a long weekend with that buck.
Sure.
I don't want to drive 13 hours.
What makes you think he's still there?
That's the thing. He could be gone. He could be dead.
Could be totally gone.
Whatever.
Yep.
But it's the fact that I can't. It's not easy. It's
not a hop, skip, and a jump.
Like we said, 7 hours is fine.
That's about the extent of a fine.
But I don't want to go
long
any
weekend.
further than 7 hours. Yeah. Because driving overnight, like I can make it like 4 hours. You can make it like 4 hours, and then we got to sleep.
And you start to become miserable.
And then it's just then you just lose the. You're like, okay, so I think.
So you either take into account in your travel time.
It's expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive.
We were filling up like 4 to 6 times, I'd say.
Yeah. It's going to be expensive no matter where you go, but
for
an out-of-state tag.
Yeah. So, anyways, I don't know yet about Kansas.
Yeah,
I loved going there. I loved that we did that. As exhausting as it was. I don't know. I think it's worth going down there, even if it's just 1 week, or even. I don't know, because I feel like that was enough time. I feel like it was possibly too long. Like we could do 5 days. But then I'm like, when are you going to scout?
So we scouted in September. We totally took a lot of time off of that last trip by going down the pre-October hunt, November hunt.
So even if they decided the WEHAs early.
Yeah, but they don't.
It'd be awesome if you could say, okay, how about in February or March? Let's go down there and scout.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have months before we go down there and hunt.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't work that way, though.
But it's not going to work. It's too difficult.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, I just want to jump in the truck and be able to go
It's
somewhere.
still far away. Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But anyways.
Yep.
I feel like.
We're going to do something. We'll do something. Yeah. We'll do an out-of-state hunt. It may not be Kansas.
So
Ohio, Illinois.
I stepped up the ladder a notch from being a beginner hunter to getting that much better from all the failing in.
Oh, yeah.
But it was good to fire 4 arrows. I don't know how it happened. It just told me that I was going to good places, picking good spots. And
you were reading the sign. You were reading the maps. You were putting in the work. You were picking the locations. You were consistent. You just weren't able to seal a deal. I think it was good. I think it was a good experience.
Yeah.
I had a good time with you.
Yeah. We docked.
We did.
We docked, brother docking.
I can't even comment on that. But I think ultimately we still got tags for Michigan.
Yep.
I don't have an Illinois tag anymore. I did shoot a buck in Illinois. So we're going to keep hunting in Michigan. We're going to possibly do some public land exploration in Michigan. We've been looking at stuff close to the house.
Yeah.
For the late season. Problem is it's gun from like here till January.
So I've got a couple does this year. I'd really like to get a buck. I don't care if I get 2. I just want 1 buck.
I just want 1 buck.
I'm getting burnt out on driving down to North Adams, even though it's only an hour and a half. It's my day. It's my day away from my kids. It's exhausting. And I don't think we have what we're looking for on that property.
And I'm hearing that more and more and more and more and more from lots of people that the deer herd is low this year. The buck population is low. And you can't base what you see online to reality. Like if you're following the Michigan big buck poll, you're only going to see big bucks.
Dude, I think
so. You just can't do it. That's not real.
I like to see deer, but like online. But I think I even made the comment to you. I think I'm going to get off of all the Michigan buck poll.
Yep.
And all the shit where all you see is people killing big bucks. You're like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't look at that and think that that's indicative of the state as a whole. Those are isolated deer in a one-off. Like if we have if we have 1 million hunters, and like, I don't know. I really don't know what the hunter numbers are. So don't quote me on that. But if we have 1 million hunters, that is such a minute fraction of a fraction of a fraction.
Oh, I
the
know
big
they're
bucks.
like, I know they're down.
Lots of people are struggling this year.
In Hillsdale County.
They're just not where we are.
They're
right
in
now.
North Adams.
Yep.
But after going to Kansas and hunting public land that vast, I learned very quickly that I am so trapped inside of 85 acres. 80 acres is wonderful.
Yeah.
But the bucks aren't coming onto that 80 acres right now, and I can't go outside of those lines.
Because you don't know anywhere else, and you haven't explored anywhere else. Yeah, we're not allowed to hunt.
To go. All the properties around us are private.
Yep.
So I cannot cross these lines and find the bucks that I know are around us. They're just not stepping into our property. So I'm struggling with that right now, and I wish I had more time to really dig into public land around me, because I've got a lot around me.
There is a lot around here. Yep.
I don't know who's there and who's doing what, where, when, why.
Yep.
Now that there's some snow on the ground, maybe it'd be a good time to go out.
I have heard the DNR guy. I had an encounter one time with a DNR guy, and he's like, man, nobody hunts out here. So we get an extended season in Oakland, Wayne, and Macomb counties around us in the urban deer population. And I don't live in the urbans, but there are enough deer around here that they want us to take more deer. They want people to take more deer, so they let us hunt all the way through January over here. He's like, nobody hunts in January. They're done at that point. Well, maybe that's the time, because it's archery only. It's usually cold as balls and snowy. Nobody wants to go out then.
And that's why right now I'm kind of just resting. I did the holidays.
Yep.
I hunted a little bit.
Yep.
I'm going to get back on my feet to where I'm excited about hunting again, and then I'm going to do what I think I need to do. I'll get another doe here and there, possibly 2. I've got a couple tags left by the end of the season, but I think that I need a break for a couple days, a week or 2, and in December I'll go back at it, and I'm going to look for those December deer. I like hunting the snow.
I love late season. I love it.
I think I might talk to you about doing some scouting on some public land.
I'd love to do it
when there's snow on the ground, and then find an area we want to hunt.
Yeah, backtrack some deer, following their tracks.
That'd
in
be
the
great,
snow.
because then in January we could hunt those areas.
Absolutely, I'm all for it.
Because there's going to be big fucking bucks out there that people, like you said, are not hunting anymore.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
So
cool. Well, I'm glad you came over today so we could do this. This is a longie. Sorry if anybody's hanging out. It's hard to cram a whole week's worth of Kansas into a short podcast. It just doesn't work.
So much happened that
much.
It's hard not to talk about it all.
Yep.
So I think we tried to speed talk through everything, but
we did. I mean, we skipped at least a day or whatever, but whatever.
We hit the highlights.
Yep, we hit the highlights. Well, cool, man. Well, thanks. We'll do this again.
Amen.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll talk to you later.
Oh, goodbye.
Is it on right now? Are you testing the levels, Dr. Huxtable? Hello, Dr. Huxtable. Ooh, deep breaths of sultrous shaking of the dick and balls. Rub them against your chin. Were you going to say something?
Nothing as important as that.
My biggest thing is that my mouth stays lubricated. I've got chapstick on, which is... I've got my drink, my beverage. Okay.
The desk down here isn't really set up for double podcasting because it hasn't been happening, but
So what
sorry
are we
about
talking
that.
about? Kansas? Kansas? Are we talking about Kansas? Kansas? The land of the giants that don't come out in front of the land of this giant?
Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. It seems good, so...
Ooh. If you could only see the way
Now I can see you.
she loves you,
Maybe you would understand.
why I feel this way about our love.
And what I must do.
I must tuck it between your legs and shove it in deep, take it out back and give you a ride on daddy's knee. Oh, on daddy's knee, I'll spank that ass and look at you deep out in the grass. I'll tell you what's hot, it's you and me together. I got a pocket full of sunshine, a kitty on my foot. Meow, meow, I want to touch it. Oh, Santa's coming to town. I'm gonna fuck your mom. I'm gonna take her out back in the grass. I'm gonna give her an ibuprofen. I'm gonna bend her over so her ass is loose. The blood will flow. It'll be nice and thin, and I'll give it to her with you.
That was way too far. But I believe that the levels are good. I believe we're good.
This isn't hot butter.
This isn't a Hot Butter podcast.
Okay.
But you could listen to you folks could go listen to Hot Butter Podcast. All episodes are still available wherever you get your podcasts.
All I do.
And there's a whole bunch of that. So If you enjoyed that, this will be at the end of the podcast. If you enjoyed that, you can go find more of it at Hot Butter Podcast.
My mouth isn't that dirty like all the time, but it tends to be when you ask me, like, hey, do a sound checker, I get put in a spot where I have to just talk, and it's not a conversation.
Right.
That's what's going to come out of my mouth. Is it's going to be the grass, the stuff like that.
Some people call that Tourette's.
It's an organized Tourette's. It's an ADH Tourette's. It's like it's just something that it's just ingrained into my blood system.
Just ingrained?
Just ingrained.
Mr. Grained?
Just like no offense.
Mr. Fence. Yeah. When I say that to the kids, they don't even laugh.
What? No offense.
When I say I don't know him, yeah. Major Lee Hardon. Major. No, what is it? Major. I was thinking about something the other day. General population.
Do you ever find yourself sitting during the rut and you're by yourself in the woods and you think to yourself, like, you find yourself aroused and you're like, I think I'm starting to experience, because I'm sitting out here.
You're rutted up.
I'm starting to feel the rut, and like my testosterone starts to flow, and then you're sitting in a tree stand and all you want to do is rip that baby out.
Never. I've never thought about pulling
me
out.
neither. I'm just curious if anybody experiences that where they start to feel it's like when you're around people that are toxic, you become
toxic.
They say you are your friends, right? Or
they say if you hang around 5 smokers, you become the 6th, is what
correct.
they say.
Yeah, so like it's the same thing if you're around a bunch of male deer that are literally just running around wanting
pre-coming.
Yes. Do you start to experience emotional passion deep in your loins as you sit up by yourself in a tree? Granted, untucking my meat from the clothing that I'm wearing at this point of the year, it's very difficult to even pee. Like I find myself, if you saw me peeing out of the skyscraper tree stand the other day, it's like I have to pull my butt so far forward just to pop out little Timmy to get it to not drip down all over my pantsuit,
right,
and my boots and the stand.
That's right.
So, anyways,
Um,
Kansas.